Chapter 484. He would use a period of time to explore his new power, and then come back to fight Tony. This was the first thought that came to Noah when he first reincarnated as a god-slayer and realized that his power system had undergone a great change. But after that, Noah found that this idea was a big mistake, because it was a complete waste of time. The great ritual left behind by Epimetheus and Pandora to reincarnate a human as a god-slayer, perhaps because it was too messy, there were many strange problems. On the surface, the god-slayer was only similar to human beings, but its nature was actually more similar to that of wild beasts, magical beasts, mythical beasts, and even gods. Naturally, even the rest of its body would be very similar to that of humans. And just like how a beast would not work hard to learn how to bite its prey, it was completely impossible for a god-slayer to learn how to do it on the ground. Therefore, the god-slayer's authority could only be honed on the battlefield and in actual combat. In other words, as long as he continued to fight, Noah's authority would become stronger and stronger, and the authority would become more and more familiar to him, and naturally, he would be able to practice it. Of course, unlike other god-slayers, Noah could not only make his authority stronger and stronger in battle, but also because the ability to limit was integrated into his authority. As long as Noah did not use his authority would enter a state of self-enhancement. However, once he entered a combat state, his authority would become more and more proficient, and he would be able to use it naturally. This was a fact that was true. Therefore, when Tony came in front of Noah with a violent battle intent and curse power, Noah's whole body and mind heated up, and he instantly entered a state of combat. It was at this time that the spirit of language, which made the curse power and power boil, and allowed him to exert more than 120% of his power, suddenly appeared in Noah's mind and was chanted by Noah. Immediately after that, the methods of using the authority of the 10 avatars of Storm, Giant, White Horse, Draconian, Golden Wolf, Priest, Phoenix, Elf, Thunder, and Warrior emerged from the depths of Noah's memory, including a deeper level of application and ability. Noah did not know that even if he entered a state of combat, it was very illegal to obtain such an exaggerated level of proficiency and use of the authority at the beginning. Logically speaking, when he first became a god-slayer, Noah's first battle would at most obtain 2 or 3 avatars to use. It would be too exaggerated to be proficient in all of them at once. However, it was unknown whether it was because of Noah's physique, or because Noah was different from other god-slayers, and directly absorbed the power of God and made it his own. Noah was so lucky that he understood how to use his authority well. Therefore, the moment Tony rushed over, Noah stopped in his tracks, and the curse power in his body was raised. I, with my violent heart, cover the sky tightly, and declare, roll up a storm for me, rain for me, and never allow you to disobey my command. When this sentence, which seemed to be a declaration to heaven and earth, slowly reverberated, the sky suddenly turned dark. A thick layer of dark clouds appeared out of nowhere and covered the entire sky, causing an oppressive atmosphere to pervade the whole world. Tony, who was rushing in Noah's direction, did not even have time to swing his demonic sword when he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger in his heart. His expression tightened, and he stopped moving, and without hesitation, he stepped on the ground and retreated. Almost at the same time, a tornado suddenly descended from the dark clouds. It cut through the air at an incredible speed and fiercely landed on the ground. Bang! Accompanied by a loud noise, the ground touched by the tornado seemed to have been drilled into by something terrible. It suddenly exploded into scattered fragments and rocks, and was swept into the tornado. The tornado fell exactly where Tony was just a second ago. Kacha kacha! The ground that was touched by the tornado continued to crack, turning into pieces of gravel and rock. They were sucked into the tornado and spread to the surroundings. Kacha kacha! In the surroundings, the buildings began to make creepy cracking sounds, and they were on the verge of collapsing. Not long after, some of the smaller buildings were uprooted and sucked into the tornado, twisting into pieces. Looking at the tornado that suddenly fell from the sky and instantly turned the ground with a range of more than 100 meters into a deep pit, uprooting and crushing buildings, and rolling up gravel and rocks, and spreading to the surroundings, Not to mention Tony, even Noah could not help but be shocked. Storm, an incarnation formed by combining Welislana's incarnation of strong wind and Mecker's storm, could cause a strong storm, and to a certain extent, it could dominate the sky and summon a storm. Noah knew the ability of this incarnation of storm, but he did not expect it to be so strong. Dominating the sky, Noah had seen it. However, what was this so-called strong storm all about? This had directly summoned a tornado and razed the surrounding area to the ground. The scale of that tornado was no joke. It was definitely comparable to those natural catastrophes. Was the power of an incarnation so exaggerated? No wonder Erica and Liliana were so afraid of the battle of the God Slayer. In fact, Noah did not think about it. The incarnation of storm was formed by combining the powers of the two highest-level gods, and it was a world of difference from the power of an incarnation of Welislana. Even Welislana's incarnation of strong wind could cause a tornado, and Mecker dominated the entire sky, causing Sardinia to fall into the range of the power of storm. Now, after the fusion of strong wind and storm, the storm naturally had the possibility of going up a level. It would definitely not be weak. Therefore, it was not that the God Slayer was too frightening, but Noah's storm incarnation physique created by the fusion of the power of strong wind and storm was truly frightening. To put it bluntly, the power of the 10 incarnations formed after the fusion of physiques was terrifyingly strong. After all, that was the power formed by the fusion of the power of one person and two gods, Noah, Welislana, and Mecker. How could it be weak? With the 10 incarnations, Noah's strength had already been raised to another dimension, and he was definitely not weaker than any God Slayer in this world. That was the truth. Oh, while Noah was still surprised by the huge scale of the tornado, on the other side, Tony was affected by the rapidly expanding tornado. With a loud cry, his body was directly involved in the tornado. A sword that can pierce through all enemies with a single wave. In order to deprive all life, host the glory, Tony, who had seen with his own eyes the fate of the buildings involved in the tornado, did not hesitate to chant the spirit of words. His right hand that had turned into steel flashed with a silver radiance and poured into the knight's sword. Clang. In the next moment, a brilliant sword light suddenly appeared from the tornado. From top to bottom, it pierced through space and swept past the huge tornado that was still expanding in an extremely orderly manner. Poochie! Under the slash of the magic sword that could cut through everything in the world, even the tornado that was comparable to a natural disaster trembled and was neatly cut in half. When Noah saw this, he reacted to the situation and instinctively chanted the spirit of words. Wind, wind, don't let the enemy escape. Offer up your final glory. As soon as his voice fell, the tornado that was neatly cut in half stagnated. Then, as if something had expanded from within, it suddenly exploded. Boom! Amidst the violent loud noise, the huge tornado directly exploded, turning into a shockwave that spread out in all directions. Chapter 485. Boom! The loud sound that made people's hearts shrink turned into a sound wave, reverberating under the dark sky and constantly reverberating like an echo. The huge tornado suddenly burst open, turning into an impact wave that surged in all directions like a tide, covering every corner of the surrounding area. Pa-pa-pa-pa. At this moment, whether it was the ground, the asphalt road, the buildings, or the vehicles parked around, they were all swept up by the violent impact wave, and even crushed by the strong wind pressure, turning into small pieces of debris that shot around like bullets. As a result, even Noah himself was affected by the shockwaves. His body was blown away, and he did not know how many times he rolled in the air before he reacted. He used the power of the storm incarnation to calm down the wind that was acting on his body and summoned by himself. It was not until now that Noah finally understood what the incarnation of the storm was all about, and what it meant to be able to cause a strong storm. The storm, in this sentence, didn't refer to the literal storm, but violent wind. Including gale, whirlwind, typhoon, and even tornado, These winds that could be called violent could be caused when Noah used the incarnation of storm, and they could be freely controlled by Noah according to his will. Of course, because it was the first time he used the incarnation of storm, Noah couldn't control the power of storm at will. As a result, he summoned the largest tornado. If the tornado just now continued to expand, then, in the end, even the whole of Italy could be covered with a supergiant tornado, and it would really destroy the whole of Italy. However, at that time, whether Noah's curse power could support the expansion of the tornado to the extent that it could cover the whole of Italy was unknown. Noah, who had calmed down the wind, landed on the ground and looked forward, and then his expression became wonderful. Gone. Everything was gone. As far as the eye could see, except for the place behind Noah and an unknown distance away, the asphalt road, buildings, cars, and the ground that should have existed there had all disappeared. What was left was only a huge deep pit and scattered pieces of debris of various buildings, asphalt roads, and cars all over the pit. Seeing this scene, Noah's heart started to beat uncontrollably. It was caused by the shock of his current power and the fear of the consequences. Erica and Liliana should have gone to evacuate the crowd, right? After glancing around the deep pit, Noah, who found no trace of anyone, murmured this sentence like a prayer. If he didn't know that Erica and Liliana would definitely evacuate the crowd the moment he walked out of the hotel, Noah wouldn't have directly confronted Tony. Now, Noah could only pray that Erica and Liliana could evacuate the crowd in time. Otherwise, he would really be guilty. Haha. At this moment, a loud laugh sounded from one of the piles of debris in the huge pit. You're indeed worthy of being my opponent. You've just become my kind, and you already have such a degree of power. I was right about you. Tony, who was laughing joyfully, pushed away the debris piled on top of him and stood up with a bang. Taking a closer look, Tony was not injured at all in the impact that seemed to be able to destroy the world. This was because nearly 100 cuneiform imprints appeared around Tony as if they were protecting him, and they were slowly fluctuating. Noah recognized those characters. They were the runic characters that originated from Northern Europe. Of course, that was not the runic magic that Noah had mastered before, but the sacred characters that originated from the myths and were mastered and used by the god of magic. That was no longer magic, but the real power of God. The power of authority. In front of him was the huge pit that he created, and behind him was the perfect environment. Standing on the edge of the line, Noah cast his gaze on the cuneiform text on Tony's body, which was the rune text that was fluctuating around Tony. As you can see, this is my second authority. Tony felt Noah's gaze on him, patted his body and lifted his knight's sword. Those people from the parliament seem to call it steel protection. It allows me to transform my entire body into steel. No matter if it's weight or hardness, it will be increased to an unimaginable level. With such a body, even that tornado you used just now won't be able to do anything to me. Furthermore, because of the increase in weight, if you were to be hit by my fist, that wouldn't be a joke. Tony laughed. That's practically immortal. But Noah knew it without Tony saying it out loud. As an expert in the field of runic characters, Noah could tell at a glance that the characters surrounding Tony were the steel runic characters. The effect of the characters was similar to the hardened runic characters. Both characters could increase the hardness and weight of the user. However, there were pros and cons when comparing steel and hardened. For example, the steel runic characters could increase the hardness and weight to the level of the toughest steel, but it would also be fixed at the steel level of hardness. On the other hand, the hardened runic characters could be continuously increased. As long as there was enough magic and quantity, it would not be difficult to increase the hardness of steel. However, that was only when compared to the steel runic characters. Moreover, the steel runic characters were at the level of magic. The runic characters on Tony's body were at the level of authority, and there were nearly 100 of them. Perhaps the hardness and weight of his body had reached an extremely terrifying level. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was immortal. With this body and the magic sword, these two authorities have always been the main components of my battle strength. As for the other two authorities, one of them is basically useless in battle, and the other one will affect me. If I use it, I will only use it when my life is on the line." Saying that, Tony looked at Noah with a burning gaze filled with battle intent. "Can you make me use that authority?" After saying that, Tony's right hand flashed with a silver light again, and a huge amount of magic power suddenly wrapped around his knight's sword. Noah, who had seen Tony's magic sword countless times, suddenly had a cold look in his eyes. In his mind, the outline of the stone plate connecting the 10 incarnations suddenly turned, and a pointer on the stone plate stopped on another image. "Fear those with wings. Both the evil and the powerful fear me because of my wings. My wings will bring you a curse, and the evil will not be able to hit me." A brand new language burst out from Noah's mouth and turned into a new power that filled Noah's body. Then Noah felt it. His vision, senses, and thoughts were all going through super acceleration. On the contrary, everything around him was going through super acceleration. At this moment, Noah obtained a speed that surpassed everything. Thus, Noah took a step to the side. In Tony's eyes, Noah's figure seemed to have turned into a phantom as he abruptly teleported to the side for an extremely long distance. Clang. At the same time, a sword flashed past Noah's original position and landed in the air. Noah, who had entered the super speed state, clearly saw this scene. He curled the corners of his mouth and shot towards Tony like a phantom. Before Tony could react, he suddenly appeared in front of him and punched towards Tony's chest. However, what happened next shocked Noah greatly. That was because the fist that was supposed to hit Tony's chest drew a huge arc and hit empty space. Phoenix, the authority, from Velislana, which allowed one to obtain a speed that surpassed everything. However, although Noah obtained a speed that was too high, due to the excessive speed, his attacks could not accurately land on his target. Therefore, Noah's punch that was supposed to land on Tony's chest went past Tony's position due to the excessive speed. It was the same principle that if a person were to run at full speed, they would not be able to control their body due to inertia and would only be able to stop after a certain distance. This incarnation is a little troublesome. Chapter 486. Chi. Amidst the faint sound of breaking air, a figure suddenly flashed in front of Tony like a meteor. Then it directly passed by Tony and rushed to the back of Tony. That was the scene when Noah couldn't accurately control his attack, causing his fist to hit the air and his figure to directly pass by Tony. It was a tornado just now, and now it's super speed. Could it be that the tornado was the power that you stole from Mekhl, who controlled the sky, the storm, and the lightning, and this super speed was stolen from Velislana? Tony was shocked when he realized what was going on, and his face was brimming with a bright smile. That's similar to Yarek's authority, but I heard that when he first obtained this authority, he suffered a lot because of it. There are a lot of problems with using this authority of Godspeed. It's not something that can do a lot of things. For example, the inability to accurately attack was one of the problems. In addition, entering the super speed state would make Noah's senses go through super speed. If he kept in this state, it would be like entering a world where time was constantly increasing, and it would make his senses dull. As for the other problems that would cause side effects to the body, they were eliminated by Noah's physique. Even so, there were many problems with the super speed brought by the Phoenix avatar. Also, although this speed is amazing, it's a pity that it's just speed, it's useless against me. Tony raised the knight's sword in his hand, and his eyes bloomed with a terrifying look like a wild beast. I've trained my eyesight a little too much. For example, I'll stare at the falling rain seriously and aim at one of the raindrops. The moment the raindrops fall in front of me, I'll swing my sword and cut the targeted raindrops in half. Thus, I've developed the ability called Mind's Eye in Chinese wuxia novels. So, no matter how fast you are, you can't hide from my eyes. The moment he finished speaking, Tony suddenly took a step forward, as if he could see through Noah's movements. He directly stabbed the knight's sword that was surrounded by a large amount of magic. Noah, who was in the super speed state, flashed out as if he teleported. At the same time Tony's sword stabbed out, his body directly appeared in front of Tony's sword. Noah's expression changed at the sudden attack, which was like a foresight. If it was a normal person, they would have directly hit Tony's magic sword, but Noah had superb senses and felt the trajectory of Tony's magic sword in advance. Just as Noah was about to collide with Tony's magic sword, he abruptly cancelled his phoenix transformation and leaped to the side. Clang! In the next second, Tony's magic sword flashed and swept forward, cutting the ground where Noah was originally at into two halves, creating a long gully. The sword didn't lose any momentum and continued forward with a sharp sound. At this moment, Noah's eyes flashed and he once again used the Phoenix avatar. Wang! In the state of super speed, this punch would only land on empty space. However, the moment he raised his fist, Noah immediately cancelled the use of the Phoenix incarnation, allowing his body's speed to return to normal as he raised his fist. The giant that blots out the sky supports the heaven and earth with his hand. I will let this divine power flow into my body. From now on, I will display the ultimate power that no one can match. In Noah's mind, the stone plate connecting the 10 avatars rotated from the phoenix to the indomitable giant. At this moment, Noah felt as though his body had been directly injected with a terrifyingly powerful strength, causing his raised fist to seem as though it could split the heavens and earth. It carried with it an extremely terrifying pressure. At this moment, Tony was still in the posture of thrusting out his sword. Feeling the terrifying pressure coming from behind him, his heart fiercely tightened. Ha-ia! It was only for a moment. Accompanied by a violent roar, Noah raised his fist and suddenly swung it down. The air cracked as if it couldn't bear the weight. Amidst the violent sound of the explosion, a violent wind blew and his fist landed heavily on Tony's back. Dong! Before he could even let out a scream, Tony was smashed into the ground by an unimaginably terrifying force, sinking into the ground. Bang! Like a meteor crashing into the ground, the terrifying force not only smashed Tony into the ground, but also shattered the ground, bursting out a deafening roar. As the ground trembled and shattered, the huge crater that had been created by the eruption of the huge tornado shook, and the range of the crater expanded from the original several hundred meters to a range of over 1,000 meters. In the legends, the god known as the great hero, Hercules, was a god of strength who could lift the sky. Whether it was Welslana or Mekl, they had a deep relationship with this god of strength. Therefore, Welslana's bull incarnation represented monster strength. When using this incarnation, Welslana would obtain divine power no less than that of Hercules. Mekl's appearance was also based on Hercules, so he also had unparalleled divine power. Giant was an incarnation formed by combining Welslana's bull incarnation with Mekl's appearance. When using this incarnation, one could obtain monster strength that was far beyond the limit. Its power was enough to split mountains and rivers. Just like how the incarnation of Storm became extremely terrifying after fusing with Strong Wind and Storm, the incarnation of Giant became extremely terrifying after fusing with Welslana and Mekl's monstrous strength, which gave Noah a terrifying divine power. Of course, it was not enough to lift the sky, but it was definitely enough to split mountains and rivers. At this moment, the violent earthquake phenomenon affected the entire crater that was over 1,000 meters wide and even outside the crater. It was as if a shockwave had shaken the ground, slowly spreading outwards. Buildings began to sway, and some of them even collapsed. In the crater that suddenly expanded to over 1,000 meters, the buildings that were originally in the area also sank into the ground and turned into ruins. With a corner as the center, the entire crater cracked open like a spider web. It looked as if a demon was about to break through the ground and crawl out, making people feel a chill down their spine. Phew! Noah, who had punched the ground, let out a long breath and slowly retracted his fist. At this moment, he felt the superpower flowing through his body and couldn't help but glance at the human-shaped crater in front of him. Don't tell me he's dead? Tony had this steel barrier, which was called the authority of an undying body. Nearly 100 cuneiform runes that could make people as hard as steel made his body's strength reach a terrifying level. However, Noah clearly felt that his punch using the giant incarnation had indeed broken through Tony's steel barrier, and landed on his body. Even so, it still brought disaster to the surrounding area. One could only imagine how terrifying the power contained in Noah's punch was. To put it bluntly, even if the giant mecha came in front of Noah, Noah was confident that he could turn him into a meteor and disappear into the sky with a single punch. This way, even if Tony had the steel barrier to counteract most of the force, it wouldn't be strange for him to die. However, Noah wasn't worried about this at all. This was because Noah knew how tenacious the life force of the Godslayer was. Even Noah had the elf incarnation that could bring the dead back to life, so Tony definitely wouldn't die so easily. But after being buried for so long, it should be possible to suffocate him to death, right? Noah looked down at the human-shaped crater in front of him and helplessly jumped in after a while. Chapter 487. When the battle between Noah and Tony came to an end, a young girl appeared on the rooftop of a building over 1,000 m away, which was lucky not to be affected by Noah's foul strength. She was a fair-skinned young girl who was obviously not born in the East. She looked like she was only 12 or 13 years old. The young girl had blonde curly hair and an extremely beautiful face. She looked like a delicate doll, but she was not childish at all. Instead, she looked mature and coquettish. If one were to describe Pandora as a sweet and adorable girl who possessed a womanly charm, then this girl would be a little adult who deliberately pretended to be an adult, but was actually an awkward little girl on the inside. This little adult had her eyes closed at this moment. Her body was fluctuating with a faint spell that allowed her vision to leap. She was observing the battle in the center of the giant crater like a clairvoyant. If there was a magician here, then he would definitely be able to recognize that the spell that the girl was using to make her vision leap was the witch's eye magic that only orthodox witches could use. In other words, this young girl who looked only 12 or 13 years old was the most orthodox witch like Liliana. Through the witch's eye magic, the young girl saw Noah jump into the giant human-shaped crater that was created by attacking Tony. She silently withdrew her spell and canceled the magic. She opened her eyes and stared blankly at the giant crater in front of her. He has just become a god slayer, and he already has such power. He even defeated the King of Swords. Is this the special thing about killing two of the highest gods before becoming a king of god slayers? The young girl was just muttering to herself, but someone immediately answered her. To be honest, I'm very surprised too. A princess-like girl with an extremely noble temperament and an extremely beautiful appearance appeared out of thin air on the rooftop. She looked down at the exaggeratedly huge pit from a distance and let out a bitter laugh. I didn't expect this new king to be able to do this. Sure enough, the kings of god slayers can't be evaluated by human standards. Hearing this, the young girl seemed to have noticed or expected that the princess would appear here. She turned around calmly, lifted the corner of her dress, and bowed to the noble princess who appeared out of thin air. Greetings, Princess Alice. Lord Guinevere seems to be doing very well as well. Alice returned the compliment with an impeccable etiquette and an elegant smile. Since you've come to Italy, why don't you tell Alice first? Isn't it better for Alice to welcome you? It was very strange for a noble lady in her 20s to a young girl who looked only 12 or 13 years old to use honorifics and etiquette. However, those who knew the situation would know that regardless of appearance, the former was less than 1/10 of the latter's age. Because Guinevere, who stood in front of Alice, was not only the goddess of the earth, but also the god ancestor who had surpassed human wisdom after several reincarnations. Therefore, regardless of whether Alice's respect was superficial or not, the young girl named Guinevere accepted it calmly and said with an elegant smile, "Thank you for your kindness. Actually, I don't like to meet the new king in such a sneaky way. However, if I do it openly, the prince will definitely be more than happy to set up a trap that will make me regret, and then wait for me to step into it myself, right?" As she said this, Guinevere turned her head and looked to the side. Am I right? Black Prince, yeah. As soon as Guinevere's voice fell, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed from where she was looking. The lightning gradually turned into a human figure, and a man surrounded by electric arcs emerged from it. The Wise Men's Council, once led by Alice, called this power lightning spark. It was the same as the incarnation of Noah's phoenix, which allowed the user to obtain the authority of lightning speed that surpassed everything. Yarek usurped this authority from the angel of lightning and illusion named Ramiel, who was also the god of disobedience, so that he could turn into lightning, enter the world of lightning speed that no one could surpass, and get the motor nerves that were as light as a cat. This authority of lightning speed was also Yarek's signature ability and the core of his battle. He, who was good at strategy, would use this authority of lightning speed to create an advantage and use strategies. He also knew the operation of lightning speed like the back of his hand, and almost no one could match him. To be honest, Noah, who had just obtained the power of lightning speed, was not just a little bit behind Yarek. To be precise, it should be said that the difference in skill proficiency was not just a little bit. Since you know the enemy's whereabouts in advance, then setting up a trap there first is a sign of respect for the enemy. If you don't have this level of awareness, then why make enemies? Yarek said in an extremely calm and emotionless tone. He didn't seem to care at all. Besides, you're not the kind of person who can't deal with someone without using everything you can, right? Very realistic as always. Guinevere smiled sweetly. You'll make the women around you suffer if you say that. This man's vulgarity is not something that happened in a day or two, Lord Guinevere, Alice said sarcastically as if nothing had happened. So, it's a luxury to expect him to behave like a gentleman. That's right. Guinevere smiled. That's true. Shut up. Yarek's calmness disappeared without a trace in an instant, and his tone became a little rough. Don't use the social skills that you use to deal with women on me. Hearing that, Alice and Guinevere both laughed. The man and the two women were chatting like old acquaintances or even best friends. It seemed that they had a good relationship, but in fact, they were not. The Sage Council, which Alice once led, was hostile to the royal factory, which was led by Yarek. And Guinevere was the common enemy of Alice and Yarek. In other words, the relationship between the man and the two women here was definitely not as good as it seemed on the surface. They were real enemies of each other. So, Lord Guinevere, you're here for the new king, right? Alice deliberately changed the topic and looked at Guinevere with a faint smile. I don't know if the seventh god slayer can satisfy you? The smile on Guinevere's face froze for a moment, and then she fell into silence. That was natural. She was the goddess of the earth in her previous life, and she was the god ancestor in this life. In addition, Guinevere had been secretly carrying out the plan, so the former goddess was undoubtedly the enemy of all the god slayers, and she also treated all the god slayers as enemies. Now, not only was the seventh king born, but she also had that level of power as soon as she was born. Guinevere was probably feeling threatened, right? A human who can kill a god will become a god slayer, but it is not so easy to kill a god. In the past, there was even a situation where 2 or 3 centuries passed without a single god slayer being born. Of course, there are also situations where multiple god slayers exist at the same time. Guinevere's expression became cold and indifferent. Now that there are 7 kings who can kill a god in this era, it is the end of the world, so that Lord absolutely must be resurrected. Because only he is the nemesis of the god slayers, only he is the one who can end the fate of all the god slayers. Leaving these words, Guinevere's body turned into a burst of darkness and disappeared on the spot. Looking at where Guinevere disappeared, Alice shrugged and looked at Yarek. That's what he said. What do you think, Alexander? What do you think, Alexander? Yarek glanced at Alice, and then his whole body flashed with electric light, and he swept into the sky, disappearing into the sky in an instant with a speed that was absolutely comparable to real thunder and lightning. Seeing this, Alice smiled happily. That man also feels pressure? As she said this, Alice cast her gaze at the giant pit that was thousands of meters wide, and the smile on her face disappeared, leaving only endless bitterness. But if possible, I really hope that he can think about us who are dealing with the aftermath. Chapter 488. The next day, in the entire Italy, whether it was the news or the headlines of the newspapers, there was only one piece of news. That was, yesterday, a meteorite fell in the center of Rome, the capital of Italy, turning the ground within a range of more than 1,000 meters into a huge crater. In this huge pit, there was basically nothing that originally existed in this place that was lucky enough to survive. Buildings, asphalt roads, cars, and many other facilities were directly turned into dust and debris under the direct impact of the meteorite. Now, only some sporadic traces could be found in the huge crater. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to find something intact except for the exposed rock formations on the ground. At that time, if the residents there were still living as before, it would definitely cause the largest catastrophic casualties in history. Fortunately, when the meteorite fell, the astronomical experts discovered the clues in advance and evacuated the people there, so this great disaster did not cause any substantial casualties to the Italian population. However, in order to restore everything in the huge pit to its original state, to the point where people could live again, it was impossible to do so without using years as a unit of measurement. In a restaurant near the so-called meteorite crater, Noah fell into a state of speechlessness as he watched the news that was constantly repeated on the TV in the restaurant. Although fortunately, there were no casualties, it is said that this disaster caused a loss of more than 15 billion euros. Erica, who was standing behind Noah, was also watching the TV, but she seemed to be talking to herself as if nothing had happened. This number is only a temporary statistic. As the relevant work proceeds, it should continue to increase. On the side, although Liliana didn't say anything, a trace of grief appeared on her face, more or less as if she was heartbroken about the losses caused by such a disaster. Of course, Liliana wasn't heartbroken about the huge loss, but her upright character made her blame herself. The factor that caused this huge disaster was right next to me, but I couldn't stop it. Can I still be considered a knight? Listening to the intentional or unintentional sarcasm of Erica and Liliana, the corners of Noah's eyes twitched, and he felt somewhat unnatural. Noah knew that once he fought with Tony, it would definitely lead to some losses, but he originally thought that it would at most be the loss of some buildings. Who knew that it would cause such a huge loss comparable to a meteorite hitting a city directly? Although it was also because it was Noah's first time using the 10 incarnations, so he couldn't control his authority very well, it should be noted that in the duel with Tony, Noah only used the power of 3 incarnations. What's more, the Phoenix incarnation only brought Noah speed that surpassed everything, but it didn't have any destructive power. In other words, Noah only used 2 incarnations to cause this disaster. It was that exaggerated. However, it couldn't be helped. After all, whether it was storm or giant, in terms of destructive power, Noah's 10 incarnations were definitely among the best. After combining the power of Noah, Welslana, and Mekker, the power of the 10 incarnations was much stronger than Welslana's 10 incarnations. There was really no way to cause the situation. While Noah was comforting himself with the excuse of having no choice, the other culprit who indirectly caused all of this was humming a song while drinking wine and eating meat in big mouthfuls. He was having a great time. Watching Tony, one of the culprits, still doing whatever he wanted while the TV in the restaurant was still broadcasting the news about the meteorite disaster, Erica was speechless at once while Liliana looked like she had given up on herself. Because they had been with Noah for a while, Erica and Liliana both knew that Noah was different from other God-slayers. They more or less had some common sense, so Noah would still listen to what they said. However, even if Doni destroyed the whole of Italy, this idiot would still be singing and living a carefree life, not to mention a meteorite-level disaster, right? In this case, what's the use of saying more? Even Noah narrowed his eyes like a dead fish and sighed helplessly. Why didn't my punch kill you at that time? Noah's punch directly broke Tony's steel barrier. To be honest, if Tony had taken the full blow with his flesh and blood, even if the bones of a God-slayer were comparable to the hardest metal in the world, he would still be dead. The problem was that Tony didn't take the full brunt of the punch. No. Didn't I say that I almost thought I was going to die at that time? Tony said in a relaxed tone that was not at all like he had just encountered a life-threatening situation yesterday. If I hadn't used my power of desperation when you punched me, I would definitely be dead now. Tony had killed 4 gods in total, so he possessed 4 powers. During the battle, Tony had mentioned that apart from the rending silver hand and the steel barrier, one of his other 2 authority was completely useless in battle, and the other was only used when he had to put his life on the line. Yesterday, Tony had used his power of desperation when Noah punched him. After that, the Sage Parliament called this power of Berserk God. It was the power of desperation that Tony had usurped from Dionysus, the god of wine in ancient Greek mythology. An power of desperation that can strengthen or activate all mystical powers and make them go berserk? Noah could not help but murmur. Because when you use it, it will affect you as the user, making you unable to control your own power of desperation. That's why you said you would only use it when you need to put your life on the line, right? That's right, Tony said heroically as he chewed on a piece of meat. Although my silver hand and steel barrier are very powerful, sometimes there will be a troublesome god of disobedience that even these 2 powers cannot handle. Usually, I would use this power of desperation to make everyone within a certain range unable to use their mystical powers. They could only fight me with their swords. This is also my last chance of victory, so I can only use it when I need to put my life on the line. When Noah's fatal punch was about to hit Tony, Tony used this authority to make Noah's giant incarnation enter a state of uncontrollable state. Thus, when the giant form went out of control, Tony had relied on the steel barrier to withstand the blow. However, he was still knocked into the ground by the power of the giant form that had gone out of control. Tony, who had almost lost his life underground, once again used the steel barrier. This power of desperation was the power of desperation that Tony had stolen from the Norse hero Siegfried. In addition to being able to turn Tony's body into steel, both the weight and hardness of his body would be increased by leaps and bounds. The steel body also allowed Tony to not be suffocated or afraid of low temperatures and enter a state of suspended animation. Tony, who had entered a state of suspended animation, managed to survive the crisis and only woke up this morning. He was full of energy again. But you really are a scary guy. Even when your power of desperation is out of control, you were still able to break my steel barrier and make the ground look like that. Tony said heartlessly. Undoubtedly, that power of desperation has many problems, but you were able to find a way to solve them in an instant and catch me off guard. You're really something. Once Noah's phoenix form was used, it had the weakness of not being able to attack accurately. But in such a situation, Noah came up with a solution on the spot. First, use the power of desperation, and then dispel the power of desperation when it was time to attack. This way, not only could he perfectly unleash his power of desperation, he could also use his power of desperation to attack. Undoubtedly, you have only defeated 2 gods. How can you have 3 powers? Tony asked doubtfully. Tornado, power of desperation, and divine strength. How did you do it? Chapter 489. As long as one was in the magic world, they had already received the information that Noah had killed Welslana and Mekhl and had become the 7th God-slayer. However, no one knew what kind of authority Noah had obtained after killing these 2 gods. But there was no doubt that Noah had killed 2 gods, so he should have obtained 2 authorities. This level of speculation was still very easy to come by. After all, for a long time, every god-slayer could only usurp one of the powers of the disobedient god after killing it. Noah had killed 2 gods of disobedience at the same time, which meant that he had usurped 2 authorities. This matter had long been confirmed in everyone's mind. However, when dealing with Tony, Noah had used 3 abilities. He had summoned a tornado that was comparable to a natural disaster. He had obtained a speed that surpassed everything. The power was enough to split the mountains and rivers. 3 abilities. That's 3 authorities, right? Tony was more and more confused. Why do you have 3 authorities? ? Hearing this, Noah was about to answer, but Erica, who knew Welslana better than the idiot Tony, muttered to herself for a moment, and then spoke out her guess first. The Demon King of North America, John Pluto Smith, defeated the god of disobedience, named Scatlibica, and usurped the authority called super transformation. That's the authority that allows one to transform into various forms and exercise the ability that can only be used in that form. Liliana seemed to have the same guess as Erica. And the undefeated god of war Welslana of ancient Persia also had the power to use 10 avatars and 10 abilities. To be able to use more than 3 abilities, the king should have usurped the authority similar to the Demon King of North America, right? The authority that summoned the tornado should be the power of the god King Mekhl. After all, the god king was the god of the sky who controlled the storm. Although Welslana had the avatar of the strong wind, he was not that strong and could not control the sky. But the king controlled the sky that day. Erica said, as for the authority of the super speed, it should be the power of Welslana's Phoenix avatar and the Bull avatar. Am I right? I've heard about the authority of the guy who lived in North America, but I never understood it. Tony scratched his head that could not store much energy and asked, is it possible to get so many abilities from a god? It is possible, but it also means that there will be a lot of strict restrictions. Liliana answered Tony's question honestly. I heard that when the Demon King of North America uses the super transformation, not only does he need to offer a designated sacrifice for each avatar before he can use it, but after every avatar is used, he can't use it again for 7 days. If the king also usurped a similar authority from Welslana, then there will be various restrictions when and after using it, right? Erica smiled brilliantly as if she had great confidence in her statement. Although I don't know if the king has all 10 avatars of Welslana, the more avatars there are, the more restrictions there are. For example, the avatars can only be used under certain circumstances. After using them, they can't be used for a period of time. There might even be side effects. Oh, I see. You can do that? Tony was enlightened. Immediately after, he looked at Noah with excitement in his eyes. In other words, you have other avatars' powers that you haven't used yet? Seeing how Tony, Erica, and Liliana summarized his authority in such a short time, Noah was stunned and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Should he say that he was too smart for his own good? Never in their wildest dreams would the three of them have thought that Noah possessed not 2, but 1 authority. However, that was a foul authority that was born after fusing with Noah's own power. Whether in terms of power or practicality, it was comparable to 10 authorities. Of course, the 3 of them would never have thought that because of Noah's domineering physique, all the powers of Welslana and Mekhl were absorbed by him, eliminating all restrictions. Now, instead of saying that Noah was using his authority as a god slayer, it was better to say that he was using his authority like a god of disobedience. After all, if these powers were his, of course, there would not be so many restrictions. Wasn't Welslana also able to use 10 avatars at will? Noah was in a similar situation. Well, that was good too. Since Tony, Erica, and Liliana all thought that Noah's authority was like that, Noah did not have to explain too much. Moreover, this was no obstacle to answering Tony's question. You're right. I still have many avatars that I haven't used yet. Noah admitted readily. I do have 10 avatars, and at least half of them have not been used yet. This sentence first made Erica and Liliana look at Noah differently. More than half of his avatars had not been used yet? More than half of his avatars had not been used yet, and he had defeated the King of Swords of Italy, who had even used his authority? If he were to use the rest of his avatars, how strong would the 7th God Slayer be? This person had just become a God Slayer less than 3 days ago. Tony's eyes flashed with the joy of a war-crazed warrior. Very well, then let's fight again. Let me see all of your avatars. As soon as this was said, the first one to react was not Noah, but Liliana. Please stop fooling around, Chin. Liliana shouted loudly, pointing at the TV as if she had lost control of her emotions. Look at what you've done. Why are you still fighting? Everyone in the cafeteria was stunned by Liliana's sudden shout. They looked at her with a strange expression on their faces. "Lily," Erica said as if she had a headache. "I know you're a righteous girl, but you don't care about anything when you're agitated. If possible, I really hope you can change a little." Only then did Liliana react. Her pretty face was flushed red, and she quickly bowed and apologized to the people around her. Only then did she get rid of the strange gazes of the people around her. Salba lei Qing. Perhaps it was because she was too ashamed and angry. The way Liliana looked at Tony had become unscrupulous and had a murderous aura. "If you continue to mess around, I'll inform Andre and ask him to take you back." Tony was speechless. "Forget it, we've already fought once anyway. It's better to leave the outcome of this battle to the next one. Anyway, my best friend is my lifelong opponent. I've already realized this kind of thing. If we're in a hurry to decide the outcome, it will make our lives boring in the future." After saying that, Donnie's expression suddenly became cheerful, and he said to Noah, "Oh, right. What do you plan to do next? If I remember correctly, you don't have anywhere to go, right?" "You rascal, you remember such unimportant things quite clearly." Noah's mouth twitched, and then he sighed and said snappily, "But is the King of Italy going to chase me out of his territory? How can that be? If you want to stay here, you're welcome," Donnie said straightforwardly. Then he rolled his eyes and chuckled. "Actually, I have something here that I've been hesitating about whether to do or not. Since you're free, why don't you join me and join in the fun?" When they saw the mysterious look on Donnie's face, not to mention Noah, even Erica and Liliana instinctively became vigilant. Erica said bluntly, "Don't tell me you're thinking of doing something that might lead to serious consequences again?" "Ching." Liliana also said righteously, "If you're planning to do something again, I'll bet everything about Liliana Kranikar that I'll stop you." Well, don't be nervous," Donnie said with a smile. "I won't do anything." However, looking at Tony's smiling face, Noah, Erica, and Liliana all understood what was going on. This guy was definitely plotting something. Chapter 490. On the same day, Donnie, Erica, and Liliana all said that they had to return to the hotel where almost all the heads of magic societies in Italy had gathered because of Donnie's summons. The entire process from Donnie's summons to Noah killing Welslana and Mekker to the battle with Donnie seemed complicated, but in fact, it was only less than 10 days. In less than 10 days, Donnie had been waiting in the hotel for Noah to become the Godslayer and for Noah to come back and fight with him. And since Donnie continued to stay in the hotel, the heads of the magic societies in Italy that had gathered because of Donnie's summons naturally couldn't leave in a hurry. At the very least, no one had the guts to turn around and leave without the permission of the King of Swords. It was also because almost all the heads of the magic societies in Italy had gathered in the same hotel that Donnie declared in a very high-profile manner that he wanted Noah to become the Godslayer to fight with him. When the news of Noah's success in slaying the gods spread, the news of the birth of the seventh king spread all over Italy. If it weren't for the heads of the magic societies in Italy staying in one place and Donnie's unusually high-profile declaration that attracted everyone's attention to Noah, the news of Noah becoming the Godslayer wouldn't have spread so quickly. Hence, while Paul, Andre, and the others were still at the hotel, Donnie, Erica, and Liliana naturally had to return to the hotel first. On the way, Donnie also forcibly brought Noah back to the hotel with him. Both Electra and Liliana were on full alert at this moment. The two girls didn't forget that Donnie was planning to involve Noah in it. Italy had suffered losses of more than 15 billion euros because of Noah. If Donnie, a simple-minded fool and troublemaker, was allowed to run around with the new king who had extraordinary strength, the world might really be doomed. Therefore, Erica and Liliana kept an eye on Noah almost the entire time, not giving Donnie any chance to get close to Noah. Perhaps the two girls would continue like this until they returned to the hotel. Noah was speechless. Why were they all treating him like he was a troublemaker? Since Noah knew that he was too powerful, he would naturally pay attention to himself and not cause such exaggerated losses, right? Erica and Liliana simply treated Noah as a child who would be led astray by Donnie. It was as though Noah would definitely mess around with Donnie if they didn't keep an eye on him. How could Noah not be speechless? If it were any other time, Noah would have slipped away long ago after being watched like a prisoner. But since Erica and Liliana were watching him, Noah had no choice. After all, when he was in Sardinia, Noah relied on Liliana's spirit vision to know the true body of the god of disobedience that he had to kill. And because of Erica and Liliana's knowledge, after learning from the two girls that Welslana had the incarnation of the white horse, Noah thought of using the black tea to plunder this power and cause the final blow, allowing him to succeed in killing the god. If it weren't for Erica and Liliana, it was really unknown whether Noah could succeed in killing the god. In addition, Erica and Liliana saved Noah, who almost fell into the sea. After saving Noah's life, Noah didn't really escape and allowed the two girls to watch over him all the way back to the hotel. Kings. Greetings, kings. As soon as they returned to the hotel, the people in charge of the Italian magic associations who were still in the hotel all came out to greet Noah and Doni as if they were VIPs. Doni accepted it calmly, and Noah had no intention of correcting him. After admitting in front of Erica and Liliana that he had to deal with the god of disobedience, as the god of disobedience, Noah was mentally prepared for this and naturally wouldn't correct the behavior of others who treated him like an emperor. In Noah's view, this was just a deal. If others worshipped Noah as their king, then Noah would deal with those gods when the god of disobedience caused trouble for these people. It was just a deal. And this was also the ultimate interpretation of the relationship between the god of disobedience and the related people in the magic world in this world. Not long after, Paolo and Andre walked out of the crowd. Hey Andre. Doni greeted Andre warmly. My friend, I'm so happy to see you so energetic. Don't call me that. You're a moving piece of trash. You're the most annoying scum. Andre scolded Tony as soon as he stepped forward. I knew you would cause so much trouble. That's why I needed to stop you. But you tied me up and threw me into the inner room of the toilet. You're not human. Bastard. Upon hearing this, Noah, Erica, and Liliana finally understood what ridiculous things Doni had done in order to fight Noah. But if they thought about it carefully, it made sense. Knowing that Noah had become a god of disobedience, Doni couldn't wait to fight with Noah. It was impossible that Andre didn't know how much trouble a head-on conflict between the two kings would cause, and it was impossible for him not to stop it. But in the end, Doni tied Andre up, threw him into the inner room of the toilet, and then rushed out to look for Noah. At this moment, everyone, including Noah, looked at Andre sympathetically. Being the butler of such a troublemaker in human form, Andre would probably suffer from mental weakness, dementia, and depression for the rest of his life. How pitiful, Uncle. Erica bowed to Paul. Erica Browntree has returned safely. It's good that you're back. Paul looked at Erica with satisfaction. I've heard about your performance. If possible, I really hope you haven't heard about it, Uncle. Erica sighed. This time, Erica Browntree, didn't have the chance to be active at all. As expected, even the Lord is jealous of my talent and depriving me of the opportunity to express myself? Erica was as self-righteous as ever. This is your first time facing a real god. It's amazing that you can do this. I heard that you also saved the king. That's a great contribution. Paul comforted with a wry smile and nodded to Liliana. Thank you for your hard work, Miss Liliana. Liliana replied seriously. It's my duty as a knight. All in all, both of you performed well. Everyone can see that, so there's no need to compare. Besides, being able to witness and even assist in the birth of the seventh king is something that others can't even dream of. After saying that, Paul turned his head and looked at Noah. He performed a noble knight's salute, which he had never done before. I, Paul Browntree, send my greetings to the seventh king. My apologies. Compared to being angry at this idiot, greeting the new king is more important. Andre's expression tensed up as he bowed to Noah. King, please forgive my negligence. You didn't neglect anything. Noah waved his hand and replied casually. Although I'm called king by you, I've only been king for less than 10 days. In the eyes of other gods layers, I'm just a novice, a rookie, and a kid. There's nothing to worry about. No, you were able to successfully kill two of the highest level gods at the same time before becoming a king. After becoming a king, you directly defeated the King of Swords of Italy. The king's power is evident, Paul said solemnly and immediately smiled bitterly. So, I've seen your power and understood the king's power. I beg the king to show mercy while you're still in Italy. Hearing that, Noah smiled wryly. Paul must be referring to the so-called crater, right? As the commander-in-chief of Italy's leading magic association, Noah couldn't understand the fear of seeing a person who could create such a disaster at any time running around. Even the heads of the other magic associations around looked at Noah with awe and fear. They begged Noah to let go of the territory they were in charge of, which made Noah speechless. Is it necessary? Chapter 491. Late at night. At this time, except for some night owls who specialized in moving at night, most normal people had already fallen asleep. In an extremely luxurious room, Noah, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. He got up, took his clothes down from an extremely luxurious hanger, put them on, and went to the window. Looking up at the bright moon hanging high in the sky, Noah's face couldn't help but soften. Even in Italy, the moon is so beautiful. Leaving these words behind, Noah walked out of the luxurious room. With the soft sound of the door closing, the entire room returned to a deathly silence. There was no longer any life in the room. At the entrance of the hotel where all the heads of the magic associations in Italy gathered, Noah slowly walked out of it. The streets were brightly lit. Even at night, the street lamps beside the road were still working tirelessly. Some of the buildings on both sides of the road had been completely turned off, but some, like the hotel, could still be seen through some windows, illuminating the entire dark world. Looking at the few vehicles driving back and forth on the road with their headlights on, Noah took a deep breath of the cold night air, turned around, and was about to walk in another direction when a voice sounded at the entrance of the hotel. "It's so late, where are you going instead of resting in your room, Your Majesty?" Erica and Liliana, who were dressed as neatly as Noah, appeared at the entrance of the hotel. Erica looked at Noah with her usual confident eyes while Liliana's expression was as solemn as a sculpture. However, both of them fixed their eyes on Noah and didn't leave him. Noah was puzzled. "Why you here?" "Of course we noticed that Your Majesty left the room," Erica said bluntly. "Don't you know that Lily and I are living in the 2 rooms next to yours, Your Majesty?" "Is that so?" Noah was even more puzzled. "Then why are you living next to me? Your Majesty, please don't ask a question you already know the answer to. How can we not look after Sarbarat when he wants to take you to do something stupid?" Liliana sighed. "We really don't want to see another disaster like the last one. Please forgive us, Your Majesty." "I understand what you mean." Noah shrugged. "That's why I left, isn't it?" Erica and Liliana were both stunned and shocked. "Left?" Erica said in surprise. "Your Majesty, are you leaving this place?" Hearing Erica's question, Noah asked in return. "Is there a reason why I have to stay here?" Erica was speechless. "Although I don't know what that idiot is planning with his brain capacity, he's probably planning something stupid that ordinary people can't come up with, right?" Noah curled his lips. "The last duel was because that idiot helped me slay a god, so I accompanied him. But this time, I don't want to continue accompanying him. Besides, Italy is also that idiot's territory, so it's normal for me to leave, right?" Tony seemed to be planning to involve Noah in his plan. As for that idiot, not only would he not be discouraged if Noah beat him up, he would also be more than happy to draw his sword and fight with Noah. If Noah scolded him, with that idiot's personality, he would definitely do his own thing and would not listen to others' advice. In that case, Noah might as well leave. In that case, no matter what that idiot planned to do, it would have nothing to do with Noah and he wouldn't be involved in it. But Liliana couldn't help but step forward and ask hurriedly, "Where do you plan to go?" Upon hearing her words, Noah twitched his brows. "But do you intend to continue monitoring me?" This time, even Liliana was at a loss for words. How could Erica and Liliana's little tricks hide from Noah? Even though they said that they were staying next to Noah's room to prevent him from getting involved in that idiot Tony's stupid plan, this also meant a certain degree of monitoring, right? After all, Noah had a tremendous power that could cause catastrophic losses even if he casually cast a spell. No one could feel at ease letting such a dangerous person wander around. It was due to this that Andre was around Tony, who also belonged to the category of dangerous people. Andre also had the role of monitoring Tony and preventing him from doing anything stupid that would lead to huge losses. It's not that I can't understand your concerns. I'm sure you will still be worried no matter what promises I make. But to be honest, if you treat me like a prisoner, you will only piss me off. That's not good, right? Noah crossed his arms and looked at Erica and Liliana. I don't want to be monitored everywhere. If you continue to be so unscrupulous, even though you are my saviors, I will consider learning from Tony and learning from him. I will tie you up and throw you into the toilet before leaving. The corners of Erica's and Liliana's eyes twitched at the same time and strong resistance surged on their faces. Not to mention Erica, who had great confidence in herself and always emphasized glamour. Even Liliana, who had always adhered to her knighthood, would probably pass out because of the excessive humiliation if she was tied up and thrown into the toilet, wouldn't she? As for resisting, it wasn't a matter of whether they wanted it or not, but whether they could. Not to mention how terrifying the authority of the seventh king of the God-Slayer in front of him was. Even before he became a God-Slayer. In terms of swordsmanship alone, this man blocked the magic sword of Italy's King of Swords and easily defeated Liliana. Therefore, if Electra and Liliana resisted, Noah could have easily taken care of the two famous prodigies without using his authority, couldn't he? Kaching seemed to have said that you don't have anywhere to go, right? Erica changed the topic. Although I don't know what's going on, you just left like this. Do you have anywhere to go? It's true that I don't have anywhere to go, but that doesn't mean that I don't have anywhere to go. Noah shook his head and looked up at the sky again. Even without that idiot Tony, I would still leave this place. Why? Liliana asked subconsciously. Noah smiled calmly and said, because I have something that I have to find. Noah had two purposes for coming to this world. The first purpose was to find a way to increase his strength, to at least increase Noah's own strength to the point where he could defeat Hades and protect his companions and family. Noah had already completed this purpose. After killing the undefeated god of victory and the king of gods in the Mediterranean Sea, he absorbed all the power of Welslana and Mekhl and fused it with his own power, giving birth to the authority of the 10 incarnations and becoming the God-Slayer. Now, compared to before, Noah's strength could be described as earth-shattering. It was no longer the same. With his current strength, it wouldn't even take much effort to deal with Hades. Therefore, Noah could focus on completing the second purpose. Find the world fragment. No matter what the reason is, there's no need for me to continue to stay here. Noah spread his hands. So, let's part ways here. After that, Noah turned around, waved his hand at Erica and Liliana, and walked to the other side of the hotel. It's not bad to have someone to send me off before I leave. Looking at Noah's back gradually walking away, Erica and Liliana opened their mouths at the same time as if they wanted to say something, but in the end, they chose to give up. They stared blankly in the direction where Noah left and did not speak for a long time. After leaving the hotel, Noah walked along the sidewalk that was still crowded even at night and walked forward aimlessly. Although I'm looking for the world fragment, the world hasn't given me any clues about the whereabouts of the world fragment. Where should I go to look for it? As he walked forward, Noah, who was thinking about this question, suddenly frowned after a while. He suddenly raised his head and looked ahead. On the opposite side of the street, a young girl slowly walked over. The moment he saw the girl, Noah's body suddenly straightened up without any reason, and his limbs were suddenly filled with strength. His body automatically entered a state of battle. Chapter 492. On the street where one or two people would pass by every once in a while, Noah's gaze met with the girl walking towards him, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become heavy all of a sudden. The girl suddenly stopped and stared at Noah's face. She was a very beautiful girl. She looked to be about 13 or 14 years old, and her height was only half of Noah's. She was a standard girl that people would think of as a child. However, such a girl not only had an angelic face, but also had a kind of beauty that ordinary people could not understand. It turned into a temperament that rippled around the girl's body, making the girl extremely eye-catching no matter how one looked at her. However, the passers-by who should have been distracted by the girl's beautiful figure didn't seem to be able to see her. Or rather, they didn't seem to be able to sense her existence. Even when they brushed past her, they continued to walk on their own, their footsteps not pausing for even a moment. It seemed that only Noah was able to discover the girl's existence. Thus, Noah saw the girl's appearance clearly. For example, the silver hair that was not too long or short, as if it had melted into the moonlight. Also, the pair of snake eyes that were as deep as the night, darker than Noah's eyes. That's right, it was the snake eyes. From the girl's eyes, Noah clearly saw that for a moment, the other party's eyes were like the eyes of a snake, and a flash of light in the night like the eyes of an owl. Looking at this incredibly beautiful girl, feeling that his body had entered a state of readiness for battle in an instant, filled with power, and entered a better state than when a human was stimulated by adrenaline, Noah could not help but smile bitterly. Sure enough, I can't stay idle. Why did his body suddenly have such a change? Because Noah met an old enemy. He met the enemy of every god-slayer. To be more precise, it should be called the god of disobedience. The god of disobedience that appeared on the ground stared at Noah with eyes that seemed to condense the entire night. After a while, a very clear but emotionless voice sounded from her body. To be able to meet an enemy in such a place, this can be considered a karma between you and me, right? God-slayer and god of disobedience. These two existences that surpassed human beings and were enemies of each other originally had an inseparable karma. At least, after becoming a god-slayer, no matter where Noah went, as long as he was still in this world, then he would be like a flower that attracted bees and butterflies, in a strange way that would make others feel inconceivable, wandering on the ground of this world, and meet the god that appeared on the ground of this world. This was fate. Therefore, the girl used the term karma. This concubine has indeed heard that there is an enemy in this land who possesses a demonic sword that can cut through everything. The girl stared at Noah intently, her voice lacking the basic uplift and without the slightest emotion. However, although you also have the aura of a sword, it is not as sharp, and it is mixed with the aura of other forces, and there is even an aura that I hate very much in it. You should not be the king of this world, right? What difference does it make whether I am or not? Noah met the girl's gaze and suddenly smiled. For me, your identity as the god of disobedience is enough, and for you, no matter where I am the god-slayer, I am your enemy. You and I can't let each other have a good time. As long as you know this, is there a need to know anything else? Well said, arrogant people on the ground who see the gods as prey between you and me. It is enough to be able to recognize the enemy on the battlefield, and the rest is not important at all. The girl raised her chin, her face was still expressionless, but her pair of dark eyes showed a touch of arrogance and joy. As a goddess in charge of war, I also have a warrior's part in my body. If I can compete with my enemy, even I will feel a little excited. As she said this, the girl's silver hair, which was as soft as moonlight, began to move without wind, and her petite body began to emit traces of fog-like darkness, which actually made the surrounding lights slightly dim. Then, play with me, God-slayer. The pitch-black fog that emerged from the girl's body not only had the aura of darkness, but also a power that made Noah's hair stand on end. It was like a poisonous gas, giving Noah a feeling that he would die if he touched it, as if it represented death itself. This girl was definitely not as simple as she looked on the surface. No, it should be said that from the surface, it was absolutely impossible to understand what kind of power this girl had that made people's hair stand on end. However, there was no doubt that this girl's oppressive power, or divine power, was no weaker than Welslana and Mekhl, who Noah had killed before. In other words, in terms of level, this girl in front of him was also a god of the highest level. However, For some reason, Noah's sensing ability seemed to capture something strange in the girl's aura. It was like a cake with a piece missing, which was out of place and very incomplete. Have you noticed this concubine's flaw? The girl's dark eyes flashed, as if she had seen through something, and cast her gaze on Noah. To be able to sense that I lack a snake, Godslayer, you are not simple, but even if I am not complete now, I still have the power to compete with my enemy. Not complete? I see. This goddess who came from nowhere did not seem to be in a complete state, so she gave Noah a feeling of incompatibility? In other words, even if this goddess in front of him was a god of the highest level, before she recovered her complete state, her power would definitely not be as strong as Welslana and Mekkel at full power, right? With this thought in mind, Noah immediately relaxed a lot. He looked around and found that there were still pedestrians around them. When he saw that they were approaching, he looked at the girl. It's not easy to fight here, let's change a place. There's no need for that. The young girl frowned and looked around. If you feel that the surrounding humans are too much of a hindrance, then let me use my death word spirit to eliminate them all. After saying this, the dark fog on the girl's body suddenly rose and spread to the surroundings. Seeing this, Noah narrowed his eyes and smiled indifferently. I'm sorry, although I don't know what you are planning to do, I said to change a place, so I have to change a place. I don't mean to ask for your permission. As he said this, in the depths of Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 avatars suddenly turned and pointed to the image of a phoenix spreading its wings. Fear those with wings. Evil people and strong people, all fear me with wings. My wings will bring you a curse, and evil people will not be able to hit me. As if it came from the distant horizon, the voice turned into an echo, echoing under the night sky. Then, the girl only saw Noah's figure suddenly disappear, and in the next moment, a hand quickly enlarged in front of her eyes. The girl's dark pupils abruptly shrank for no reason. However, it was already too late for him to react. In the girl's eyes, the hand that enlarged in front of her suddenly grabbed her throat and lifted her up. Shortly after, the girl heard the sharp sound of the wind blowing past her ears. That was the sound of Noah, who had entered the state of lightning speed, directly lifting the girl up and leaping up. Like a phantom, his body turned into a flash of light and flew towards the sky. When Noah used the Phoenix avatar, not only could he obtain a speed that surpassed everything, his body would also become abnormally light, and his agility and jumping ability would be greatly improved. If there was someone at the scene, then he would be able to see that Noah, who had turned into a phantom, flashed past like a stream of light and grabbed the girl's neck. Then he soared into the sky, like a meteor streaking across the sky, and fell in another direction. It was only 2 or 3 seconds. In the next moment, the girl felt the hand that was choking her neck fiercely throw her to the ground. Bang! A muffled sound resounded through the sky. Chapter 493. Whoosh! With a sharp piercing sound, a petite figure shot down from the sky like an arrow leaving the bow, smashing directly into the ground without any reduction in momentum. Bang! In the muffled sound, the petite girl smashed into the ground, stirring up a burst of thick smoke and scattered gravel, causing the falling gravel to make a burst of pa-pa sound. Bang! However, in the next moment, the smoke and dust that filled the air from the ground was blown away by a burst of dark wind like an explosion, revealing the situation inside. The girl, whose whole body was fluctuating with a deep mist-like darkness, stood in the middle of the dark wind without the slightest injury, but her eyes were slightly hazy as she looked forward. Noah, who had appeared in front of the girl out of nowhere, looked around as if there was no one around and nodded in satisfaction. I thought I wouldn't have a chance to come here again, but I didn't expect that I would use this place as a battlefield for the second time. However, it seems that this place is really suitable. Only then did the young lady react as she surveyed her surroundings. Soon after, she discovered that she was in a terrifyingly huge pit. The giant pit was quite wide, at least more than a kilometer in size. The inside of the giant pit was filled with scattered debris and gravel of various buildings. The ground was slowly cracking like a spider web, as if something was about to drill out from the ground, which made one's hair stand on end. Impressively, it was the giant pit caused by the battle between Noah and Tony. No one will come here again. Even if there is, no one will come to this barren place at night. Noah looked straight at the girl and shrugged. Don't you think it's good to use this place as a battlefield? The girl did not answer Noah's teasing words, but stared at Noah for a while and suddenly said, "Some time ago, I felt that there was an unusually strong curse power in this place. I was originally looking for a snake, but I became interested. With the idea that it's not bad to go a little further, I came here." That was why Noah had coincidentally met the god of disobedience in Rome, Italy, who had blended into the crowd. Now that I think about it, the only ones who could create this place, other than us gods, are you, god slayers. The girl's eyes flashed. King of god slayers, is this temporary battlefield created by your power? Like I said, that kind of thing is not important at all. Noah slowly withdrew his sloppy expression and said calmly, "I'm sorry. Although I have no enmity with you, since you've become a god slayer, and judging from your behavior just now, you don't seem to care about the lives of humans. In order to prevent you from causing unnecessary trouble, I'll have to ask you to leave." A strong curse power burst out from Noah's body, like a burning flame, rising from Noah's body, causing Noah's coat and clothes to flutter without any wind. After all, the people here serve me as their king. As a deal, I've already decided to take care of you, god of disobedience, for them. Seeing Noah's body constantly fluctuating with curse power, the girl finally smiled. Her smile was unusually happy. She looked exactly like Tony. The girl was also happy for the upcoming fierce battle. Amazing power. Only with such power can you be qualified to be a god's enemy and have the ability to wield your sword and kill us gods, the girl said with joy from the bottom of her heart. However, God Slayer, there's one thing you're wrong about. It's not that we have no enmity. You're the king of god slayers and I'm a god. We're enemies, don't forget this. Thank you for reminding me. Noah's eyes gradually narrowed. Then let's begin. The moment the words fell, the atmosphere in the huge pit suddenly exploded like a volcanic eruption. Just when Noah was about to make his move, the girl's face suddenly stiffened. She suddenly turned her head and looked at the other side of the night sky. This feeling, seeing the girl suddenly turn her head and look in another direction, the oppressive aura on her body suddenly stagnated and showed signs of decreasing. Noah frowned. "What are you doing?" The girl ignored Noah and just stared blankly at the other side of the night sky. After a while, she turned her head and looked at Noah. The mist-like darkness on her body shrank back into her body. "What's your name? Didn't I say that it's not important?" Noah's brows furrowed even tighter. "If you want to know before you're willing to fight, then it's fine to tell you. My name is Noah Doria." "Noah Doria?" The girl repeated the name a few times as if she wanted to remember it. Then she nodded. "Let's leave this battle for later." Noah was stunned. "Although running away from the battlefield is beneath the dignity of a goddess, I am the goddess of war. Running away and retreating is also an important part of war. Regrouping is definitely not something to be laughed at," the girl said with an emotionless voice. "Moreover, I have to admit that at this time, even if I fight you, I will most likely lose before I retrieve the snake. That is a loss of composure that I cannot allow. So, let's wait for me to recover my complete Trinity form before we fight again." After saying that, the girl's petite body was gradually covered by a layer of darkness that emerged from the ground. Only a pair of dark eyes stared straight at Noah, rippling with dense darkness. "Finally, let me tell you my name. I am Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war who appeared here in order to retrieve the snake that was lost in ancient times. I am also the queen of the gods who had obtained everything in the past and lost everything in the end. Noah Doria, don't forget the name of your enemy. Wait here for the arrival of Athena the disobedient." After leaving these words, the girl who called herself Athena was finally covered by the thick darkness and completely disappeared. Noah could only look in the direction where Athena disappeared in astonishment, his expression becoming extremely interesting. Athena? Athena, one of the most famous Olympian deities in Greek mythology? The goddess of wisdom and war? Like Pandora, Athena was the most famous goddess that everyone was familiar with. It would not be an exaggeration to say that she was the most famous goddess. Although this goddess who called herself Athena appeared in the form of a small, like Pandora, the aura of the highest god on her body made Noah believe that this was the case. Moreover, for a god, their name was equivalent to a part of their power. This was because the essence of a god came from mythology, and the most basic factor that formed a myth was naturally their name. Therefore, as long as a god was a god, they would either not report their name, or once they reported their name, they would never report the wrong name. This was certain. But if the other party was really Athena, then it would be troublesome. One must know that Athena was not only the most famous goddess of wisdom in Greek mythology, but also the goddess of war who ruled over war. Her father was the king of the gods in Greek mythology, Zeus. Her mother was the primitive goddess of wisdom, Metis. No matter which one, they were extremely famous gods. Do I have to meet such a famous god every time? Noah's frown deepened. Moreover, she said that she was the queen of the gods who had obtained everything and lost everything in the past. She also said that she was incomplete and had lost the snake. What is the snake? Also, what is the form of the Trinity? The more Noah thought about it, the more puzzled he became. It could not be helped. Although Athena was super famous, she was only famous in name. As for the core of the myth that formed Athena, if one did not really study it, it would be impossible for most people to know about it. With this thought in mind, Noah closed his eyes slightly and fully activated his sensory ability, bringing everything around him into his control. The entire range of his sensory ability was clearly reflected in Noah's mind, giving Noah pieces of information and information. Not long after, Noah felt a trace of aura. He opened his eyes and used the phoenix incarnation. His body was like a phantom, like a mirage, and disappeared. Chapter 494. When the sky was bright again, Noah had re-entered the city and came to a restaurant. This was a small restaurant that was not very luxuriously decorated. It was a small restaurant that belonged to the general public. It was not very high-end. Even ordinary civilians could order food here without any scruples. Now, the sun had just risen, and there were only a few customers in the restaurant. They seemed to be office workers who were rushing to work and were eating breakfast here. However, these people were not in a hurry. They were all wearing casual clothes and eating breakfast with a leisurely look. At this time, these people were eating breakfast leisurely while watching a TV placed in the restaurant. The TV was broadcasting the news. Moreover, it was the same as yesterday. The news reported that a meteorite had hit the Italian capital, Rome, causing a huge crater and a huge loss of more than 15 billion euros. Noah helplessly looked at the news that had been reported countless times. He immediately walked into the restaurant, found a seat, and sat down. The waitress who came out to greet him was a 17 or 18-year-old girl. If Noah did not understand Italian, he might be troubled at this time. Unfortunately, Noah was very proficient in the languages of the world. Not to mention speaking, even writing was not a problem. Moreover, after becoming a god slayer, Noah also gained a very special ability. It was a special ability that all god slayers had. It was called Thousand Languages, and it allowed people to learn the secrets of magic in any language in just a few days. It was a secret technique that could only be learned by magic experts who had studied magic for many years and had comprehended the profound meaning of the spirit of language. Once one became a god slayer, this secret technique of 1,000 words would be engraved into the body of the god slayer instinctively. Others may spend a lifetime to understand magic, but once a god slayer succeeds in killing a god and reincarnates, they can automatically learn magic. This made Noah wonder how many times he cheated. However, thanks to this ability, at least in the future, Noah did not have to worry about language problems, even if he went to a world that was not set in modern times. As such, to Noah, the problem of language did not exist anymore. So, Noah quickly ordered a cup of coffee to wake up his slightly tired mind because he didn't sleep all night. He looked at the menu and ordered spaghetti and a sandwich. The spaghetti and sandwiches were freshly made, and so was the coffee. It was said that pouring a large amount of sugar into the coffee was the way Italians drank coffee. It was said that the taste of coffee would be very strong, sweet, and fragrant. Back in Sardinia, Erica had said more than once that it had to be drunk this way to taste good. However, Noah preferred to drink black coffee without any sugar. Noah didn't like things that were too sweet. Instead, he had a special liking for salty flavors. In addition, the refreshing effect of black coffee was even more obvious. Therefore, when he drank coffee, Noah drank black coffee directly. In the beginning, he had tasted a lot of bitterness, but after getting used to it, Noah felt that compared to the sweet coffee, the black coffee tasted better. In fact, this was also because of Qing Zi's influence. In the world of Night of the Magicians, when they were still living in the manor house, although Yu Zhu would make black tea for them every day, and Qing Zi also liked to drink black tea very much, whenever there was an important magician job that needed to be done, Qing Zi would drink black coffee. During that time, Noah was still learning rune magic in Yu Zhu's manor house. Qing Zi, who had to check the barrier at night, said that Yu Zhu didn't like to drink black coffee, so she forced Noah to drink black coffee with her. It was during that time that Noah gradually got used to the taste of black coffee. He was poisoned by Qing Zi. By the way, Qing Zi herself didn't like to drink black coffee. She only drank black coffee to work more efficiently at night. She forced Noah to drink with her, most likely because Qing Zi wanted to mess with Noah. In the end, Qing Zi didn't expect that in the end, Noah actually got used to the black coffee and even drank it with relish. Yu Zhu, who happened to see this scene, was surprised that Noah was much more mature than Qing Zi, which made Qing Zi's face as dark as the bottom of a pot. However, men who knew how to drink black coffee were more mature and steady men, and Qing Zi admitted this point honestly. Of course, Qing Zi wasn't the kind of person who would give up easily. Qing Zi, who couldn't use black coffee to mess with Noah, somehow found out that Noah didn't like to eat sweet things. After that, she bought all kinds of desserts in disguise and forced Noah to eat with her, which really made Noah work hard for a period of time. After that, one day, Noah heard a scream from Qing Zi's room that resounded throughout the manor house. After that, Noah found out that because Qing Zi had been eating all kinds of desserts in disguise, she seemed to have gained a lot of weight because of the excessive calorie intake. Therefore, people like Qing Zi were the type of people who harmed others would eventually harm themselves. Noah couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of the past. He finished the black coffee in his hand, and after ordering another cup, he began to ponder while munching on his sandwich. Following Athena's scent, Noah came to this place. However, he didn't know if it was because the sun had risen, but the dark scent on Athena's body that he had been able to sense suddenly disappeared, which made Noah unable to continue tracking her. However, Noah was certain that Athena was in this city. There was no mistake about it. If he wanted to find Athena, it would be a real game of hide and seek. At least I know that the goddess is nearby. That's good enough, Noah muttered to himself. Moreover, since she's the god of disobedience, she will cause trouble sooner or later. I'm not afraid that I can't find Athena. I just don't know why Athena suddenly left last night. Athena was the goddess of wisdom and war. Excluding the aspect of wisdom as a goddess of war, Athena was much more powerful than Ares, who was also a god of war. After becoming the god of disobedience, it was not impossible for her to sink into the fanaticism of battle and war. She would definitely not give up on battle suddenly. Unless Athena had discovered something important. Maybe it's the snake that the goddess has been looking for? Noah finished the sandwich in his hand and ate the spaghetti. Although I don't know what's going on, I can confirm that Athena is incomplete. Unless I find that so-called snake, even if Athena is the highest god, it shouldn't be difficult to defeat her. If this sentence was heard by others, they would probably laugh bitterly. For humans, there was no way to defeat a god. Even the weakest god could only be sealed and not killed. As the highest goddess, even if Athena lost a part of her power, she still couldn't be weak. Even the god slayer couldn't defeat her. Noah said that it wouldn't be difficult for Athena to defeat the god slayer, which didn't sound like a god slayer who was born less than 10 days ago. But Noah's physique was so foul. He absorbed the power of the highest god, the god of victory, and the king of gods, and combined them with his own power to derive the power of the 10 incarnations. Noah's power leap was too exaggerated. It was not an exaggeration to say that he reached the heavens in a single bound. So, the real foul was Noah's physique. Compared to this overbearing physique, Noah's power was nothing. At this moment, the door of the restaurant opened, and 2 people wearing black cloaks walked in from the outside and sat in the corner. These 2 people dressed so suspiciously came to the restaurant, but they didn't attract any attention at all. Only the waiter staggered over as if he was sleepwalking and accepted their orders with blank eyes. Noah, who noticed this scene, raised his eyebrows without batting an eyelid. Magicians? The 2 suspicious black-cloaked people were 2 magicians. They seemed to have used some kind of magic to make the people around them unable to notice them. They also used a hypnotic magic to control the waiter and order the food. Whether it was their disguise or their actions, it was too suspicious. If they didn't want to be noticed, they could have just changed their disguise. Was it necessary to do this? Noah, who felt very suspicious, began to pay attention to the 2 black-cloaked people. Chapter 495. In the presence of 2 very suspicious black-robed men, the office workers in the restaurant were still watching TV and eating breakfast, and they didn't realize that there were 2 aliens among them. The 2 aliens seemed to have said something to the waiter with blank eyes, and then the waiter staggered away again, probably in this state to prepare food for the 2 black-robed men. Then, the 2 black-robed men talked to each other as if there was no one else around. The people from the headquarters should be almost here, right? If they rushed here overnight, they should be here soon. In this case, we can finally excavate the ruins. I don't know what's in the ruins, but there's a huge curse power gradually condensing in it, that's for sure. Such a huge curse power, maybe it can lead to the appearance of the god of disobedience. If that's the case, then this time the harvest is big. With the power of the god of disobedience, we must teach those formal magic societies a lesson. Fortunately, the incident with the crater attracted the attention of the magic societies in Italy away from us. That's how we were able to successfully hide from the spies of the magic societies and excavate the ruins. I heard that it was the duel between the 2 kings that caused the crater. TSK, sure enough, the God Slayers are a group of monsters. Forget it, if the excavation of this ruins is successful, maybe we can borrow the power of the god of disobedience. Then even if those formal magic societies ask for help from the God Slayers, we will have the power to fight. Yes, let's finish our meal quickly and go back to the ruins. After the above conversation, the 2 black-robed men sat there quietly, chatting about some unimportant things while waiting for the dishes to be served. After the waiter staggered and served some dishes with blank eyes, the 2 began to eat. On the other side, Noah, who clearly heard the conversation between the 2 black-robed men, pondered slightly. If I'm not mistaken, the 2 black-robed men in front of me should be magicians from some evil magic society, right? After all, they just said the words, formal magic society, which proves that they are not a formal magic society. A person's evil thoughts were limitless, not to mention a person with power. Just like how in the world of fairy tale, there were universal magic and forbidden magic like our system, there were also some extremely taboo magic in this world. The only ones who could use this taboo magic without any scruples were those evil magic guilds who were rejected by the orthodox magic guilds. According to the words of these 2 evil magicians, the society they belong to seems to have found a ruin, and it is very likely to attract the god of disobedience. Because of the duel between Noah and Tony, all the magic associations in Italy were now focusing on the shocking crater, which led to the discovery of this ruin by the evil magic associations. They planned to take advantage of this opportunity to excavate the ruin. Could it be that Athena suddenly left last night because of the appearance of this ruin? Noah's heart jolted. He raised his head and cast his gaze towards the 2 black-robed men. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up. After the meal, the two evil magicians dressed in black robes walked out of the restaurant and entered the street as if there was no one around. There was a faint fluctuation of magic on their bodies. The two black-robed men used the magic of invisibility that could make ordinary people unable to detect them. They reduced their sense of existence to the lowest level, and no one would notice them. They walked on the street in a dignified manner. After a while, they turned into an alley. The next moment, the fluctuations of magic on the two black-robed men changed, and a magic circle spun under their feet. Duh! Amidst the loud stomping sounds, the two black-robed men suddenly soared into the sky like birds. Then, as if they were directly stepping on air, they leaped forward and forward in a certain direction. That is the magic of jump. For a full 10 minutes, the two black-robed men used the magic of jump to continuously jump in a certain direction. Because they didn't need to take a detour, and because they had amazing jumping ability, the speed of the two men was faster than the average car. It didn't take long for them to jump into a remote wilderness. And the two black-robed men who jumped into this remote wilderness abruptly disappeared without a trace. Wang. Almost at the same time, Noah, who was like a phantom, quietly appeared at the place where the two black-robed men had disappeared amidst the vibrations of space and atmosphere. He furrowed his brows slightly, closed his eyes, and activated his sensing ability. After a while, his furrowed brows relaxed. Barriers? Within the range of Noah's sensing ability, a large part of the wilderness in front of him was covered by several boundaries. Concealment barrier, repelling barrier, and blocking barrier. A total of 3 barriers, quite a big deal. The concealment barrier can isolate the inside and outside of the barrier, so that the people outside can't see anything inside the barrier, only the wilderness. The repelling barrier can give everyone within 100 meters of the barrier a hint of leave and do not approach, making it impossible for ordinary people to come close. The blocking barrier can isolate all sounds, auras, and even the fluctuations of curse power. No matter how big the changes inside, the people outside will not be able to detect it. These 3 barriers are very common types of barriers, but they are also the most commonly used type of barriers. Thus, Noah, who had lived with Qingzi and Yuzhu for quite some time, and had even gone to Yuzhu's library, was able to easily identify these 3 barriers. Immediately, Noah opened his eyes and suddenly smiled. To need to set up 3 such cautious barriers, I don't believe that the so-called ruins are not here. After saying that, Noah directly walked forward. It's a pity that spells and whatnot are useless against the God Slayer. After saying that, Noah directly stepped forward and broke into the barrier. Buzz! In the next moment, the barrier that was touched by Noah suddenly shook. It was like the surface of water that was rippling, but also like boiling water. It kept fluctuating. Under the direct impact of the God Slayer's body, which has the ability to resist curse power, the 3 large barriers were disturbed without any suspense. Bang! Then, in a muffled sound, the 3 barriers broke at the same time. Then, the scene that appeared in front of Noah completely changed. First of all, the boundless wilderness disappeared and turned into a rocky land. In the middle of the rocky land, there was a passage that led to the underground. At the end of the passage, there was a huge stone door that had been opened. In this rocky area, a large group of magicians in black robes were doing all sorts of work. Some were using magic to excavate the surrounding land, some were transporting rocks and soil, some were conducting research on the massive stone gate, and some were even going in and out of the gate. The appearance of Noah and the destruction of the barrier naturally made everyone present turn pale with fright. Who is it? How am I? In front of all the magicians dressed in black robes, Noah spread his hands. What I can be sure of is that you are definitely not good people. As soon as his voice fell, the magicians present finally reacted. Kill him. Don't let him spread the news here. Attract the attention of the official magic association. It was not known who shouted, but after that, all the magicians' bodies rose with curse power and looked at Noah with murderous eyes. Seeing this, Noah raised his eyebrows, and just as he was about to do something, 2 sounds echoed in the air. You actually want to use a curse on the king? There should be a limit to your ignorance. Despicable person! Who allowed you to point your sword at the king?" Accompanied by these two delicate shouts, two beautiful figures landed in front of Noah, like knights protecting Noah, one on the left and one on the right, protecting Noah behind them, majestically facing everyone in front of them. The newcomers, one was wearing a red and black outfit with a face full of confidence and power, while the other was wearing a blue and black outfit with a stern and serious expression. They were none other than Erica and Liliana. Chapter 496. Looking at the two knights who suddenly appeared in front of him, Noah was a little surprised. "Why are you here?" Erica spat out a powerful voice that reminded one of a lion's without turning her head. The corners of her mouth also curled up slowly. "Although it's okay to answer you now, it's rare for us to make such a grand entrance. Why don't we let the clown back down first? Please wait for a moment." Liliana closed her eyes for a moment before opening them abruptly. "It's not up to you to deal with a group of despicable evil magicians." Facing a group of magicians who had the absolute advantage in numbers and were at least dozens of times their number, both Erica and Liliana appeared to be at ease and didn't panic at all. It wasn't because they were backed by the 7 god-slaying kings in the world, but because they were confident that they could absolutely defeat the enemies in front of them. Erica Browntree, Liliana Kranikar, the two prodigies of Italy's Red Copper Black Cross and Bronze Black Cross, were going to show off all of their powerful strength and strong hearts here, proving that they were not just pretty on the surface. Looking at how Erica and Liliana were at ease and didn't take them seriously at all, many irregular evil magicians were infuriated. However, some of them also heard Erica and Liliana's words and couldn't help but waver. "King? Did they just say, king? Could that man be?" Without giving the group of magicians time to react, Erica and Liliana's slender bodies spurted out an extremely impressive amount of spell power, bathing their bodies in spots of dim light brought about by the waves of spell power. "Steel Lion and Lionheart King, as my ancestor, please listen to the oath of Knight Erica Browntree. I am the successor of the Horn Flute, the descendant of the Black Warrior. If my heart doesn't yield, my sword won't break. Lionheart King, the essence of struggle is now in my hands. The time for the duel has come, Lionheart King. My wings, the steel that forms the phantom blades, Grandmaster Silversmith, grant me strength." Melodious words echoed from the two girls' mouths like a symphony. Two magic arrays, one red and one blue, immediately appeared in front of Erica and Liliana's outstretched palms. In the next moment, two cold weapons appeared in the center of the magic array and fell into the hands of the two girls. What fell into Erica's hand was a long sword as slender as a western sword and as sharp as a knight's sword. It was a famous weapon called the Lion King's Heart, which was Erica's only weapon and favorite sword. What fell into Liliana's hand was a silver-white military knife. It was called the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman, and it was a weapon that was no less valuable and powerful than the Lion King's Heart. It was said that the Lion King's Heart and the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman were originally a pair of magic swords. Their former owner was a paladin who stood at the top of Italy and was no less powerful than Paul in terms of power and status. Erica and Liliana had each inherited the pair of weapons since they were young, allowing the two famous magic swords to shine in their hands. It was unknown whether it was the person or the sword that was famous, but when the evil magicians saw the Lion King's Heart and the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman, they all clamored. "You're Erica Brantley and Liliana Kranjkar?" Erica narrowed her eyes, and the smile on her face became a little dangerous. "I didn't intend to reveal my name to the shady clown, but since you've recognized me, I'll take care of you beautifully since you have such good taste." While Erica was making a declaration before the battle, Liliana had already spun the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman in her hand, and the tip of the sword pointed downward. With a slight air-piercing sound, she stabbed the silver military knife into the ground with a swish sound. "Mother who gives and takes life, give me the beacon of the dark land." The spirit of the language turned into power, causing the spell power around Liliana to surge into the ground through the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman that was stabbed into the ground. Plop. Like the surface of the water with a stone thrown into it, the ground rippled slowly with the sound of water, sweeping across the numerous magicians who were still in panic. Then, the ground suddenly turned soft as if it had turned into a swamp. The magicians standing on the ground felt their heels stick, and their bodies sank into the ground. What's this thing? Is it the magic that turns the ground into a bottomless swamp? Despicable witch. Hurry! Use counterattack magic. Seeing this, Erica smiled coldly. Unfortunately, it's too slow. With that, Erica tossed the Lion King's heart into the air. The sharp long sword abruptly pierced into a magic formation that rippled out above her head. The Lion King's heart, bestowing upon the steel lion the mission to tear, pierce, crush, defeat, annihilate, and triumph. I entrust you to this battlefield. The Lion King's heart that was pierced into the center of the magic formation sank into the magic formation. As if intending to take its place, as the sharp long sword plunged into the magic formation from the bottom, a gigantic steel lion emerged from the top of the magic formation as if it had just broken through the ground. It stood on top of the magic formation and leaped forward. Bang! With a muffled sound, the giant steel lion suddenly fell to the ground. The huge steel lion raised its head and roared. Then, like a bullet fired from a gun, it pounced toward the magicians who were stuck in the ground. Cries of agony resounded in the air above the rocky ground for a long time. As the last magician let out a sorrowful cry under the bite of the steel lion, the battle came to an end. The steel lion emitted crimson light, and its body began to disintegrate into a silver-white longsword. It flashed in the air and returned to Erica's hand. As expected, the battle was one-sided. The magicians, who were dozens of times more powerful than them, were like the most vulnerable ordinary people in front of Elektra and Liliana. In less than 10 minutes, they were all felled by Elektra's Lion King's heart and Liliana's silver master craftsman. Looking at the black-robed people lying on the ground, Noah, who was waiting on the side with his arms crossed, sighed. Then he narrowed his eyes and looked grumpily at Erica and Liliana who were walking toward him. Now, can you tell me why you're here? Erica smiled mischievously. I think His Majesty should have guessed it. We used tracking magic and followed His Majesty here, Liliana answered Noah's question solemnly and lowered her head. I'm really sorry for tracking His Majesty without His Majesty's permission. But His Majesty, we had no choice. Noah curled his lips as he looked at the two young ladies in front of him who spat out different words but had the same matter-of-fact expression without the slightest hint of regret or guilt. In other words, you're still worried about letting me wander around Italy, so you chased after me and decided to keep an eye on me, right? Erica and Liliana immediately looked at each other. If we say no, I don't think His Majesty will believe us. So, we don't intend to hide it. That's one of our purposes, Erica said with a sweet smile. However, that's not important. What's important is that we feel that although you're not as uninterested in things other than fighting as Sarbatlii, you should need someone like Andre by your side. Please let us follow His Majesty, Liliana said solemnly. With the reputation of Bronze Black Cross on the line, Liliana Kranikar will definitely protect His Majesty. Erica and Liliana knelt on one knee at the same time and performed the knight salute, waiting for Noah's decision. Staring at the two girls, Noah sighed. What's going on? Chapter 497. Alim. After a while, Noah told Erica and Liliana about how he met Athena last night, followed her here, discovered those evil magicians and came to this ruin. After understanding the whole story, Erica and Liliana fell silent almost at the same time. They looked at the evil magicians lying on the ground with hostility in their eyes. What a loss of composure, Liliana expressed her inner emotions directly. Although the losses caused by the battle between the two kings made the magic societies in Italy focus most of their attention on the crater, which is why they didn't discover the petty tricks of these despicable people, none of the magic societies discovered the situation here. It's really a loss of composure on the part of the magic societies in Italy. There's nothing we can do about it, Lily, Erica analyzed calmly. After all, Italy is basically controlled by various magic societies in secret now. Even if there were any ruins, they would have basically discovered them. Who would have thought that there would be undiscovered ruins hidden in this place? Or maybe someone discovered it but didn't explore it, right? Noah made sarcastic remarks as if it had nothing to do with him. Although they are all magic societies in Italy, there is also a hostile relationship between the Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross. It's impossible for all the magic societies in this country to be united. This ruin might have been discovered by some magic society, but in order not to attract the attention of other magic societies, they haven't found the opportunity to explore it. Noah glanced in the direction of the ruins. To put it simply, it's possible that some magic society has been hiding this ruin because they want to monopolize it and wait for the opportunity to explore it. In the end, it was discovered by these evil magic societies during this sensitive period, right? Erica sighed. It's not impossible. Upon hearing that, Liliana furrowed her brows subtly, revealing a trace of helplessness and irritation on her face. Liliana's personality was too straightforward, which could be said to be the most standard type of knight. Therefore, Liliana generally wouldn't get involved in complicated matters such as conspiracy theories. It could be said that in terms of talent in swordsmanship and magic, Liliana wasn't inferior to Erica at all. However, Liliana didn't have the temperament and qualities of a social lady at all. That was why Liliana had been toyed with by Erica since she was a child. Liliana could also understand the various speculations of Noah and Erica, but it was difficult for her to participate in the discussion. The only thing Liliana could do was to express her feelings without hiding anything. Hence, Liliana said as if she was having a headache, "I didn't expect that even a goddess like Athena would appear and look for the snake. If she finds this snake, when she regains her identity as the Queen of the Trinity, even the king would have a hard time dealing with her." Indeed. Erica also furrowed her brows cutely. It's fine if it's an ordinary Athena, but this Athena actually has the possibility of recovering her identity as the Trinity. That's really a terrible divine spark. Once Athena retrieves the snake, it will be really troublesome. Hearing Erica and Liliana's words that came from the bottom of their hearts, Noah was stunned for a moment before he came to his senses. Wait, do you know what Athena meant by the snake and the Trinity? Erica and Liliana nodded heavily at the same time. That goddess is really too famous, but unfortunately, the Athena you know is slightly different from this Athena, Erica said to Noah. Your Majesty, do you think that this Athena is the goddess of wisdom and war in Greek mythology? Noah was taken aback. Isn't she? Yes, but not all of them. Liliana replied. Your Majesty, you said that this Athena claims to be a queen who once had everything and then lost everything, and a goddess of the Trinity. Then, the Athena in Greek mythology is just a part of this manifested goddess. Athena, Métis, and Medusa. Erica directly revealed the true identity of the goddess that Noah encountered by chance. The Trinity means that this Athena has 3 divine sparks, which are not inferior to the highest gods at the level of the King of Gods and the King of Gods at all. So, that was the essence of Athena. Athena had always been a goddess closely related to snakes. And when snakes were mentioned, the first thing that came to mind was Medusa, who was also closely related to Athena. Athena and Medusa were originally the same goddess. That was before the myth of Athena and Medusa spread to Greece and became the myth of Athena and Medusa in Greek mythology. Tracing back to the origin, in fact, Athena was the monster of snakes. No, it should be said that she was the goddess of snakes. Not only that, in Greek mythology, Métis, the goddess of wisdom who was Athena's mother, was also originally Athena. Athena was originally not a goddess of Greek origin, but a goddess of the earth who was born in North Africa and worshipped by the entire Mediterranean Sea. At that time, Athena had many other names and images. Métis, Medusa, Nat, Yanata, Ashrat, and other such mythical beings were originally clones of the original Athena, which could be said to be Athena's sisters. Athena was not only the goddess of the earth, but also the god of darkness who ruled the underworld and the goddess of wisdom who controlled the wisdom of the heavens. Because Athena was always accompanied by these three attributes, she became the goddess of the Trinity. These were the characteristics of Athena. And as the characteristics of the god of war, they were only added to Athena's divine sparks with the changes of time. The god of Hades who managed death and the greatest disaster, which was related to war, became the god of war, which was very reasonable. Then, the key to the birth of the Trinity of Athena was the snake. Although the cow, sheep, pig, and other creatures were also used to symbolize the harvest of the earth, in fact, Athena's essence was the snake. This was the most ancient goddess of the earth, which was also the key to the mother of the earth. Life would go through the stages of birth, growth, maturity, aging, and death. The grains of the earth would also go through the 4 stages of growth in spring, lush in summer, bear fruit in autumn, and wither in winter. Therefore, the snake was the true ancient symbol of the mother of the earth. After several molts, the snake would go through a cycle of hibernation and awakening. It was a creature that symbolized the cycle of death and rebirth, as well as the migration of seasons. Compared to the cow, which symbolized harvest and love, the snake, which symbolized both the grace of life and the death of calamity, was the true goddess of the earth. Therefore, Athena was the goddess of the earth, and also the goddess of the snake. And for the ancient people, a strange and mysterious creature like the snake was very rare. It would constantly molt and shed its outer shell, and in the winter, it would hibernate for a long time. Then, as if it was resurrected from the dead, it would wake up in the spring and easily cross the gap between winter and spring. This was called immortality. Therefore, Athena was also the immortal god of the underworld. She was the god of nature and the underworld who brought death. This was why Athena was the goddess of the earth and the god of the underworld at the same time. Moreover, the underworld imagined by the ancient people basically existed in the dark underground. It was a winter world shrouded in darkness. Therefore, the time dominated by darkness, namely night, was probably also a part of the underworld. Therefore, Athena was also the goddess of darkness. As the goddess of the earth who brought grace, Athena was the goddess of darkness who controlled the underworld and the goddess of wisdom who controlled wisdom. The 3 types of divinity gave Athena a supreme status. This made Athena have the characteristics of a bird, in addition to the essence of a snake. Bird. Noah was stunned. Why are you talking about a bird again? Erica and Liliana nodded to each other and revealed the true identity of the supreme goddess, the Trinity of Athena. Chapter 498. In addition to the word snake, Athena also had a deep relationship with the word bird. Medusa, the goddess of snakes with evil eyes, was the best evidence to prove the close relationship between Athena and birds. The 3 Gorgon sisters, including Medusa, not only had snake hair, they were also said to have golden wings on their backs. The second of the 3 Medusa sisters, Euryale, meant the one who flies far away, while the youngest sister, Medusa, was the winged Pegasus mother. In the Mediterranean region, there was an ancient portrait of Medusa. In this portrait, Medusa was holding a snake with both hands and had a bird on her head, which clearly showed the close relationship between snakes and birds. However, what really connected Athena and birds was her identity as the goddess of the earth and the underworld. A long time ago, the ancestors of humans believed that birds had the magical power to fly between the other world and the modern world. Moreover, the souls of the dead would turn into birds and fly into the sky, or be guided by birds into the underworld. In order to go back and forth between the earth and the underworld, the snake, that symbolized the earth, and the bird, that symbolized the underworld, were combined and became the symbol of Athena, the goddess of the earth and the underworld. Therefore, the word bird was added to the word snake, and Medusa became a winged snake or a winged snake. The original Athena, who had not yet been spread to Greece and became a goddess of Greek mythology, was a winged snake, the goddess of life and death worshipped by the ancient people. She ruled over the earth and the underworld, and controlled the wisdom of the heavens. There was no doubt that this Athena was the highest existence among the gods. This was not a random divinity, but the true form of Athena before it was spread to Greece. After all, at that time, society was still dominated by women, and it was not surprising that the goddess of mythology was a queen. Therefore, Athena was the goddess of the gods at that time, the queen of the gods with the highest authority. This was the true Athena, the highest existence among the gods. However, the society of women's supremacy soon ended, and men began to replace women, becoming the real masters of society. Under such circumstances, myths began to be falsified. The goddesses, led by Athena, were chased down from the highest throne, and the male gods with military power began to rebel. The myth of a female-dominated society was wantonly changed by the men who ended the female-dominated society. The era of the queen came to an end, and the era of the king began. The supreme deity changed from the matriarchal Earth Mother to the strict Father God. Thus, starting from Zeus, the king of gods was born. As a result, Athena's identity as the queen of the divine realm who ruled over the Mediterranean Sea became a downtrodden and obedient queen. Under the situation where myths were altered by men, the oldest Athena and her clones fell and became the wife, sister, or daughter of the king of gods, losing their past glory. Not only did Athena become Zeus's daughter, but Metis was also humiliated by Zeus and his intelligence was taken away. Medusa even degenerated into a monster. Not only that, but Hera and Aphrodite in Greek mythology were also the same as Athena, the Mother Earth whose myths had been tampered with. They had the same origin as Athena, and they were both goddesses of life and death. The defeated Mother Earth turned into a winged serpent, which was also mentioned in the myths. Dragon. The evil dragon that appeared in countless myths and legends and was defeated by the heroes and gods was the Mother Earth's demeaning appearance after her myth was tampered with and defeated. It wasn't because they were evil monsters that they were defeated. Instead, it was because the victors wanted to fabricate their own legitimacy and smear the losers as evil monsters. Then, they spread the story of how they destroyed the monsters and established such a myth. Because of this, the winged serpent, which was also a dragon, turned into a monster in the myths, and the divinity of the Mother Earth was also denied. The Athena in Greek mythology was one of the queens of the gods and the divine realm after her myths had been tampered with. Metis, who was reduced to Zeus's wife, was also a part of the queen who ruled over the Mediterranean Sea. Liliana finally said, "And the essence of this great queen of the gods, Medusa, who represented the snake, was tampered with to become the banshee that Athena sent the heroes to kill. Perhaps it was because of this conflict that the Athena who appeared lost the essence of the snake? In other words, once Athena finds the snake that she lost, the goddess will be restored to the queen of the gods who once ruled over the Mediterranean Sea and the divine realm, the highest goddess of the Trinity." Erica concluded, "Once she regains her true identity as the queen, Athena will undoubtedly be the highest goddess, definitely not below Velislana and Mekhl." Hearing all this, Noah was suddenly enlightened. No wonder Athena said that she was the queen who once had everything and then lost everything. In this way, Athena was not as simple as the goddess of wisdom and war in Greek mythology, but the queen of the earth, darkness, and wisdom of the divine realm. Thinking about it carefully, the darkness that filled Athena's body with the aura of death last night was the best evidence to prove that Athena was the goddess of darkness in charge of the underworld. At that time, Athena had lost her most essential snake, and her identity as the goddess of the earth was taken away. She could only exercise the authority of the goddess of darkness and wisdom. Presumably, compared to when she was in her complete state, her power should be much weaker. That was why Noah felt that Athena at that time was not difficult to deal with at all. However, if Athena were to take back the snake, it would be a different story. At that time, Athena would no longer be the goddess of wisdom and war, but the queen of the divine realm. At this moment, Noah felt that one of the patterns in his heart that connected the 10 avatars suddenly lit up for no reason, as if it had turned into a dried-up lake that had been injected with a large amount of water, causing a part of Noah's power to become active. Noah raised one of his hands. That hand was shining with a golden radiance, illuminating the surrounding space resplendently. That is. Erica and Liliana also saw this scene clearly and were stunned on the spot. Noah, on the other hand, seemed to understand something. He raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth rose. It seems that even if the queen really retrieves the snake, my sword will be able to cut the snake in half. Hearing this, Erica and Liliana seemed to have thought of something, and their expressions suddenly brightened. You've got a good weapon, haven't you? Erica put on a gorgeous smile again. As expected of the king who can defeat the two highest-level gods at the same time. If you can even get that sword, then you may become the most suitable king to deal with the disobedient god, and even the strongest king who won't be any weaker than the other god slayers in the future. If that's the case, we'll have a better chance of defeating Athena. Liliana's mood also became a little excited, but then it became a little strange. However, in less than 10 days he was able to fight with two of the highest-level gods, fight with the King of Swords of Italy, and now meet the former queen of the divine realm. This time, it seems that there will be a lot of disputes around the king. That's why you need me, Erica glanced at Noah and said with a faint smile. After all, if there are too many disputes, the king won't have time to care about worldly affairs, right? Noah rolled his eyes. Wait, Kirk. Liliana frowned. Have you forgotten about my existence? Lily is not suitable to be the king's butler, Erica said bluntly. Compared to butler, Lily is more suitable to be a simple knight, isn't it? Liliana was speechless. Liliana, who was too straightforward, was indeed not suitable to deal with complicated affairs like Andre. It doesn't matter what you do. For me, it's just that I lack an attendant to lead the way and deal with affairs. Noah sighed again and then turned his eyes to the entrance of the ruins. Let's go in and take a look. Maybe the snake that Athena is looking for is inside. Both Electra and Liliana nodded. Chapter 499. They were in an extremely humid underground ruin. The floor, ceiling, and surrounding walls were pitch black, but they were all covered with moss and obvious wet water stains. Water was even dripping from the top of the ceiling, making one wonder why there was a dry, rocky land above the ruin. Through the stone door at the entrance of the ruin, Noah, Erica, and Liliana entered the interior of the ruin one by one. As soon as they entered the ruin, except for Noah, Erica, and Liliana's faces stiffened, and their eyes became solemn. Only those who had the same power in their bodies could sense it. Inside the ruin, almost every corner was filled with a faint spell power. In the depths of the ruins, in front of the bottomless pitch-black tunnel, a powerful curse power that was clearly impossible for ordinary humans to possess blew over like a gust of wind, constantly slapping Noah, Erica, and Liliana's faces. Sensing the enormous spell power that permeated the air, Erica and Liliana's expressions turned solemn. Now I'm sure that even if there's no Athena's snake in this ruin, there must be something incredible sleeping there. Erica's face was solemn, but there was no fear in her eyes. I guess it's at least something related to the god of disobedience? It's really lucky to find this place in advance. Liliana was already holding Silver Master Craftsman in her hand, and she looked straight ahead of her in the passage. If it's something related to the god of disobedience, maybe we can do something in advance to resolve the disaster that is very likely to involve the god of disobedience. I'd rather have Athena's snake in there. Noah had a different opinion. We haven't dealt with Athena yet. If another god comes out, I don't want to keep trying to deal with two gods at the same time. As soon as he said that, Erica and Liliana looked at Noah strangely at the same time. If it's Sarbat Raiching, she'll probably be overjoyed, right? Erica couldn't help but say. Isn't it the wish of every god-slayer to be able to fight a god? Not to mention, you're just a new king, Liliana added. Although you have killed two gods at the same time, you only have 2 powers at the moment. Compared to the other deicide, it is too little. Even you have 4 powers. Don't you want to kill more disobedient gods to increase your own strength? It was not surprising that Erica and Liliana would think so. Who would mind if they were too strong? Not to mention the power of God. once he succeeded, he would be able to increase his strength to a certain extent. Unless they were like Tony, who obtained authority that was completely useless in actual combat. However, killing a god was a gamble in the first place. After all, a god's authority could be strong or weak. If a god's authority was so weak that it could not be used in battle like Tony's, it was considered bad luck. However, if a god's authority was strong, it was not impossible to surpass the god slayer in one fell swoop. Noah was believed to have only 2 powers at the moment. It was not strange for him to want to increase his own strength, right? It was a pity that Noah only had 1 power, but it could be used as 10 powers. With so many powers in his body, increasing the power of 1 more power might not necessarily increase Noah's strength. Moreover, the reward was proportional to the risk. They are gods. Do you think they are mosquitoes that you can swat whenever you want? Noah replied impatiently. It's good to be able to increase my strength, but I have to be alive to use it. Instead of fighting 2 gods at the same time and not knowing when I will be killed, I prefer to fight steadily and surely. Even if I want to fight, 1 is enough. Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Be careful that you can't swallow it and choke yourself to death. On the uninhabited island, the king who said that he wanted to kill the 2 highest level gods at the same time said so. Fortunately, Erica and Liliana did not know about this. Otherwise, they would have complained. Let's go in. Noah took a step forward. There is definitely something up ahead. It is very likely that Athena or something will appear at any time. You guys be careful. With that, Noah planned to walk in front of Erica and Liliana. This was an almost instinctive action. In such a dangerous place, it was natural for a man to protect a woman in front. However, Erica and Liliana reached out their hands with great tacit understanding and each grabbed one of Noah's arms. At times like this, it is a knight's duty to walk in front and explore the way, Liliana said to Noah with a serious expression as usual. As a king, you can't use yourself to explore the way. If you treat me as an ordinary girl, even if you are a king, I, Erica Brantree, will draw my sword and show you the bravery of a knight. Erica smiled fearlessly. A king's duty is to deal with gods. Leave the rest to me and Lily. With that, Erica and Liliana protected the stunned Noah behind them. They stood side by side and looked ahead. Lily, it seems like we haven't gone on a crusade together like today for a long time. Erica had a confident smile on her face. It just so happens that the king that the knights need to protect is also here. Why don't we see who is braver? To be honest, I don't encourage personal strife at times like this, Liliana said without turning her head. However, you are the only one I will not lose to. The 2 girls, who were known as prodigies, looked at each other with intense sparks in their eyes. Then, they held their beloved swords and stepped forward at the same time. Moreover, it was as if they were in a race. They dashed forward abruptly as if they were not allowed to fall behind. Only then did Noah react. Seeing Erica and Liliana disappear at the end of the passage, his outstretched hand hung in the air and he was speechless for a long time. In the end, Noah squeezed out a sentence in a speechless manner. What happened to the protection? Noah, who chased after them half leisurely and half helplessly, soon discovered Erica and Liliana who had stopped. Hey! Noah called out instinctively, but the scene that appeared in front of him made his voice come to an abrupt halt and his footsteps came to a halt. The scene before Erica and Liliana could be described as hell. Corpses in black robes. Puddles of bright-colored blood. Small pits that popped out from the ground. There were also black snakes that crawled out of the pits, wrapped around the black-robed figures, and tore them apart crazily. Needless to say, the black-robed figures were the companions of the evil magicians outside. These magicians also held various tools in their hands, such as ordinary shovels and some unknown magic tools. It was obvious that they were excavating this ruin. Liliana's expression was unprecedentedly solemn. Even though he deserved to die, he still makes people feel uncomfortable. Is this the capability of an illegitimate magic association? Erica sounded rather helpless too. Generally speaking, For ruins like this that have obviously not been excavated, the source must be investigated in advance. Then, a professional geomancer will investigate and determine the degree of danger before excavating. These illegal magic associations naturally don't have such a formal response. It's understandable that they ended up like this because they were in a hurry to excavate the ruins. The so-called geomancer technique referred to magic that was similar to feng shui. It was a ritualistic magic that allowed one to see the geomancer and spiritual energy of the land and manipulate them to bring benefits to oneself. Those who knew geomancer techniques were geomancers. If a geomancer were to investigate the ruins, they would be able to see the geomancer and spiritual energy inside the ruins and detect all the dangers, thus preventing the loss of personnel and slowing down the progress. Unfortunately, the average evil magic association wouldn't have such a formal way to deal with it. Barging in rashly would naturally result in this outcome. At this moment, the black snakes that were biting the black-robed figures made creepy sounds, attracting the attention of Noah, Erica, and Liliana. Then, the three of them realized that all the black snakes were aiming their glowing green eyes at them. Chapter 500. Hiss. Black snakes that weren't too huge lifted their heads from the corpses of the black-robed people lying on the ground. Their small heads were aimed at Noah, Erica, and Liliana, and they flicked their forked tongues and let out chilling hisses. Rustle. Then, sounds of friction against the ground could be heard. Upon a closer look, the black snakes were emerging from the small pits on the ground. Together with the black snakes coiling around the corpses of the black-robed people, they crawled towards Noah, Erica, and Liliana like ants swarming out of an ant nest. Erica and Liliana tensed up. They raised Lion King's heart and silver master craftsman at the same time and aimed at the group of black snakes crawling towards them. Faint traces of spell power were attached to the swords. Noah, who was standing behind Erica and Liliana, stared at the black snakes crawling towards them. After a while, his eyes flashed, and he suddenly spoke. "Be careful, those aren't ordinary black snakes. These snakes have traces of spell power on them, and they don't have the aura of living creatures. They aren't real living creatures." Upon hearing that, Erica and Liliana discovered that each of the black snakes was shrouded in a faint layer of spell power. These curses were extremely weak. Even if they were used to cast the lowest level of magic, there would be a problem of insufficient quantity. However, if all of the black snakes had curse power, then the total amount of curse power would be extremely impressive. "Lily!" Erica immediately shouted. "I know." Liliana responded almost at the same time. She raised the saber in her hand and placed it vertically in front of her. A large amount of spell power gushed out of her body. The essence of fantasy, the steel that plays beautiful melodies. "Please give me invisible wings." Liliana condensed all the curse power in her body onto the Grandmaster Silver Craftsman. She stretched out her empty hand and flicked the blade of the silver military knife. Ding! Along with a pleasant bell-like ringing sound, the curse power covering the Silver Master Craftsman reverberated like a sound wave, sweeping across the black snakes on the ground. The black snakes crawling towards Noah and the other two suddenly froze in place as if they had been petrified, unable to move at all. The magic sword, Silver Grandmaster Craftsman, was a steel that could play beautiful music. It could play all kinds of magic tunes and use them as secondary weapons. They had the effect of disturbing the listener's heart, weakening spell power, robbing physical strength, and so on. The effects varied according to the different magic tunes. Just now, Liliana had played a demonic tune that could weaken the spell power and steal the physical strength of the black snakes on the ground, depriving them of the faint spell power and even their physical strength, rendering them unable to move. Erica's Silver Master Craftsman. Argus, Stropes, Brontes, grant my sword the protection of thunder. As soon as she finished speaking, a series of crackling electric currents echoed from Erica's Silver Master Craftsman. A burst of intense electric current lit up the entire dark underground. Go! Erica threw the Erica's Silver Master Craftsman with lightning flashing on the sword like a spear. Like a bolt of lightning breaking through the air, The Erica's silver master craftsman shot out and landed in the middle of a dense group of black snakes. Beep, beep, beep. The lightning that was originally surrounding the Lion King's heart was like boiling water. It began to boil, and through the body of the sword that was inserted into the ground, it suddenly spread out in all directions like a spider web, crazily crossing each other on the ground. Pa pa pa. In the next moment, the black snakes that were hit by the violent electric current shrank their bodies, and they all exploded in a series of muffled, crisp sounds, turning into small pieces of gravel that fell to the ground and mixed into the soil. Before long, all the black snakes were wiped out. Seeing this, Erica and Liliana didn't relax. Instead, their expressions became more solemn. After the black serpents were eliminated, the curse power that was originally covering the black serpents and weakened by Liliana's demonic tune actually spread into the air and gathered there, forming a huge lump of curse power. Rumble. Immediately, the ground began to shake slightly. At the same time, an ominous premonition rose in Erica and Liliana's hearts. No! Erica and Liliana were startled. But before they could do anything, an accident happened. The huge spell power block that gathered in the air suddenly shook, and the shaking ground immediately floated up and gathered on the huge spell power block. In just a short while, a huge beast was formed in midair. The beast had scales, horns on its head, sharp limbs, and a pair of huge wings on its back. Its pupils were like those of a snake, emitting a cold and fierce ruthlessness. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Noah recognized the true form of this beast. It was a dragon. Perhaps it should be said that it was the symbol of the Mother Earth, a winged serpent. Roar! The dragon's roar shook the air, carrying a violent force that seemed to penetrate the space. It spread in all directions and even turned into wind waves that blew toward Erica and Liliana. Erica and Liliana couldn't help but tremble. A divine beast. The tamed beasts of the gods, or the demon beasts, demonic beasts, and holy beasts that only existed in myths and legends, were divine beasts. They had tremendous power. Once they appeared on the ground, except for the god-slayers or the god of disobedience, only the holy knights, who stood at the peak of human beings, had the power to fight them. Unfortunately, although Erica and Liliana had amazing talents, they couldn't rival the holy knights, who stood at the peak of human beings, when they were still underage. It was already impressive for them to reach the rank of Grand Knight. However, if it was only a Grand Knight, then it would be a little difficult for the two of them to deal with a mythological beast. Roar! The vicious dragon, which was 3 to 4 meters tall and whose head almost touched the ceiling, raised its head and roared. Then, it raised one of its dragon claws and swung it forward. Whoosh! A sharp sonic boom immediately rang out, kicking up a violent gale that flashed through space, heading in the direction of Erica and Liliana. Erica and Liliana's hearts skipped a beat. They hurriedly raised Lion King's heart and silver master sword in their hands and added strong spell power to the swords, trying to resist the vicious dragon's blow. Clang! However, in the loud sound of steel colliding with steel, Erica and Liliana grunted at the same time. In the sparks and strong wind, they bounced back as if they had hit a wall and didn't stabilize themselves until they took more than a dozen steps back. At that moment, a ferocious glint flashed in the evil dragon's eyes. It raised its claws once again and swung them at Electra and Liliana in a strong gust of wind and an ear-piercing sound. Oh no! It was already too late for Electra and Liliana to react. Just when Erica and Liliana were about to use magic to strengthen their physical defenses to resist this blow, an indifferent voice sounded. Stop it! Although the voice was very soft, it echoed clearly. At the same time, a strange curse power filled the entire space. It was as if the entire space had turned into an invisible swamp, becoming sticky. Under such circumstances, the vicious dragon's sweeping blow seemed to have fallen into a swamp called space. It froze and couldn't move anymore. The vicious dragon's eyes flashed with a bloody light. It tried desperately to twitch its arms, but it couldn't move at all. Soon after, the indifferent voice sounded again. Who told you to move? With just this one sentence, the evil dragon's body suddenly froze in place, and there was no longer any trace of movement. Erica and Liliana's eyes widened. What's going on? Chapter 501. Roar. The gigantic evil dragon let out a low roar. Every corner of its scaly body was clearly twitching. However, it was as if something was tightly squeezing it into that space. It couldn't move at all. It could only let out a series of angry roars, causing the surrounding air to vibrate continuously. Erica and Liliana seemed to have thought of something. They turned their heads abruptly and looked behind them. There, Noah's whole body was fluctuating with an extremely terrifying spell. His eyes seemed to be flashing with a dim light as he muttered to himself. I use these words to provoke the gods in the sky. Exercise this magic power, chant this spell, make everything in the world bow and kneel. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the word spirit turned into a soft echo like a declaration. It wandered in the dark space of the underground ruins, making the fluctuation of the spell around Noah's body slowly wander and fill the entire space. It was because of the existence of the spirit of speech that could provoke the gods and the enormous power of the curse. The mythological beast, which was a great enemy to humans, was like an obedient pet under the command of the king who killed the gods. It no longer moved, and even its roar was full of fear. Only then did Erica and Liliana realize what was going on. Noah used authority. That was one of the authority, called the 10 Incarnations, Priest. Priest, the incarnation formed by combining Wellislana's youth, incarnation and Noah's rune magic. Using this incarnation could obtain the ability to protect and dominate, shelter and make humans obey. Only when using this incarnation could the user use the rune magic. Combined with the authority itself, the power of the rune magic was greatly increased, and it was also independent. It didn't need to be in contact with the magic base plate to use magic equivalent to the authority. Wellislana was the guardian of the royal authority and the people. And the embodiment of this nature was in Wellislana's youth incarnation. When using the youth incarnation, not only could Wellislana protect the people he protected and make them obey, but he could also interpret the royal authority itself in words. That was domination. When he was fighting with Noah on the uninhabited island, Wellislana, in the state of the incarnation of the young man, made the waves retreat with a single word, and made the sand's sword form with a single word, vividly reflecting the word, control. Now, Wellislana's youth, incarnation and Noah's rune magic had combined to form a new incarnation, priest. After all, language and writing originally had a close relationship that couldn't be separated from each other. Combining the incarnation of the young man that represented the dominance and protection of language with the rune magic that represented writing couldn't be more suitable. Using the priest incarnation, Noah could also obtain the spirit of speech that was not weaker than Wellislana's spirit of speech. He could interpret the king's authority with spirit of speech and language, and could also use the rune magic that was completely separated from the magic base plate. It was the same as Tony's protection of steel, but the scope was not limited to steel. Of course, to deal with a mere divine beast, Noah didn't need to use the rune magic that had already reached the level of authority. He only needed to use the spirit of speech to firmly control the divine beast that was considered a great enemy to humans. I am the strongest, and I hold all victory in my hands, no matter if it is a human or a demon. I am the one who defeats the hostility of all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. After chanting the holy words of the invincible and undefeatable God of victory, Noah raised his head and looked at the dragon that was firmly controlled. A glint flashed across his dark eyes. Just like those black snakes, undoubtedly, there is no breath of life in its body at all. It is completely like a moving corpse, but there is a huge amount of curse power supporting its movement. It even gave birth to a certain level of wisdom and gave birth to a divine beast. Noah walked forward and passed by Erica and Liliana, who were staring at him blankly. He came to the front of the dragon and sized it up for a while. Then he fixed his eyes on the dragon's reverse scale. I'd like to see what your true face is. After saying that, Noah raised one of his hands. His arm trembled all of a sudden, and a series of magic lines like electric wires spread out and covered Noah's arm. Using the enhance magic to strengthen his arm strength, Noah raised his hand over his shoulder and pulled it back. His entire arm was like a sharp spear, suddenly piercing through the air and fiercely stabbing towards the dragon's reverse scale. Poochie! The scales on the evil dragon's body were broken apart. Its skin and muscles were also mercilessly pierced through by Noah's spear-like palm, causing green blood to splatter everywhere. Awoo! The dragon's roar became painful. Noah, who turned a blind eye to this, forcefully pulled out his hand that pierced into the dragon's body amidst a tearing sound. After another burst of green blood spurted out, he tapped his toes on the ground and retreated rapidly. Then, the dragon's painful roar came to an abrupt end. Crack, crack. Under the gaze of Erica and Liliana, the dragon's body cracked like a stone. Cracks gradually spread on its body, and its body gradually petrified with the appearance of the cracks, turning into a stone statue riddled with holes. In the next moment, the huge evil dragon statue directly exploded, turning into a sky full of gravel that fell to the ground. Looking at this scene, Erica and Liliana did not come back to their senses for a long time. The divine beast that made the two grand knights of Italy, who were known as prodigies, fall into a bitter battle was destroyed just like that? It was not until this moment that Erica and Liliana realized how big the gap was between them and the king. Sure enough, humans could not resist the God Slayer, who was the king. Therefore, the God Slayer was the demon king. Noah, who did not know how Erica and Liliana felt, focused his gaze on his hand that had just pierced into the dragon's body. At this time, in Noah's hand, a fist-sized badge was lying on it. It was a badge that was as thick and ancient as a rock like polished obsidian. On the surface of the badge, there was a clumsy portrait that looked like a human face. Taking a closer look, the hair of the human face was actually composed of snakes with twisted bodies. Many places on the badge had been blurred, and the stone itself was quite worn. At a glance, one could tell that it was a rather ancient object with a long history. That badge was dug out by Noah from the dragon's body. Relying on his sensing ability, Noah found that the curse power on the dragon was almost all gushing out from a foreign object in its body. It was through that foreign object that the dragon's movements could be formed, and even its existence was maintained by the curse power provided by this foreign object. So, Noah dug out the foreign object. Needless to say, that foreign object was the badge in Noah's hand. This is Medusa? Looking at the portrait on the badge, Noah said with some uncertainty, "Is this the snake that Athena is looking for?" Hearing this, Erica and Liliana came back to their senses and also noticed the badge in Noah's hand. That's... Erica recognized the emblem at a glance and was surprised. Could it be the Stone of Gorgon? It should be. Liliana stepped forward and took the badge from Noah's hand, looked at it carefully, and then met Noah's puzzled gaze and explained. This is the ancient symbol of Mother Earth, a road sign that guides many goddesses to the disobedient Mother Earth. Simply put, it's something like a grimoire. Grimoire? Noah could not help but be startled, and his eyes became even more puzzled. But this is not a book, it's just a badge made of stone. There are no words on it, only pictures, right? In the era when the gods still existed on the ground, not to mention paper, even words had not yet appeared. Liliana shook her head and explained. However, its function and concept are the same as a book. That's why it's called a grimoire. However, other than the oldest Mother Earth goddess like Athena, it doesn't mean anything else. It's a god relic that only gods can use. Chapter 502. God Relics. To put it simply, they were props and tools used by the gods during the mythological or mythological era. These god relics only reacted to the power of the gods, but they could not be used by the godslayers. The only ones who could use them had always been the gods. Of course, it was also possible to find a way to use the god relics in a more roundabout way. But in general, humans still could not use god relics as they wished. Only the gods could use specific god relics without any means. The stone of Gorgon was such an existence. It was the symbol of Mother Earth. It was a god relic that only the oldest Mother Earth could use. Not only could such god relics be used by the oldest goddess, but humans could not find any other way to use them. It was a god relic that only the Mother Earth could use. So, this Gorgon stone is most likely Athena's snake? Noah glanced at the badge in Liliana's hand. It's engraved with a Medusa-like pattern, and only the oldest Mother Earth could use it. I can't think of any other possibility besides the snake that Athena is looking for. Both Erica and Liliana nodded in agreement with Noah's idea. Let the king keep this. After hesitating for a moment, Liliana handed the Gorgon stone in her hand to Noah. Since Athena is looking for it, if we keep it, it will be taken away sooner or later. After all, humans can't fight against the godslayers and the disobedient gods. Erica recalled the scene of that powerful mythological beast being cleanly defeated by Noah and sighed, which was a rare sight. If we give it to Tharbiter, Tharbiter will be very happy to give it to Athena. We don't want to see an all-out war with Athena, who has recovered her identity as the Queen of the Trinity. I don't care. Noah took the stone of Gorgon over as if he really didn't care about it. In this way, Athena will not be able to recover and will not be a match for me. I can't help but worry. Only then did Erica and Liliana relax a little. Logically speaking, even if Athena had not recovered to the highest level of the Trinity, she was still a goddess of wisdom and war from Greek mythology. She was much stronger than the average god. Under such circumstances, whether a king who had been born for less than 10 days could deal with such a goddess was really quite suspenseful. However, Erica and Liliana didn't doubt Noah's words at all. He was able to block the attack of Italy's King of Swords before he became the king of killing gods. He was able to kill 2 gods of the highest level before becoming the king of killing gods. After becoming the king of the god-slaying, Noah defeated Doni and had the ability to cause Italy a huge loss of 15 billion euros. All these achievements indicated that Noah's strength could not be judged by the standard of a typical god-slayer. Perhaps, the only ones who could match up to the current Noah were the 2 legendary kings. This thought came to the minds of Erica and Liliana at the same time. At this time, Noah, who was weighing the stone of Gorgon, paused, and with an emotionless smile on his face, he turned his head and looked at a corner. "Aren't you going to come out and say hello?" Erica and Liliana were stunned at first, and then their bodies suddenly tensed up. They turned around abruptly, pointed the heart of the Lion King and the Master Silver Craftsman in their hands at the place where Noah was looking at, and activated the spell. The whole place suddenly fell silent. But the next moment, a fog-like darkness suddenly rose from the corner where Noah, Erica, and Liliana were facing, and gradually turned into a petite figure. Who else could it be but Athena? The dark eyes like a snake and a bird turned and fixed on the stone of Gorgon in Noah's hand, and the darkness around Athena fluctuated slightly. That was not just pure darkness. As the dark goddess in charge of the underworld, Athena's darkness often represented a kind of power. Feeling the dark aura of death fluctuating around Athena, Erica and Liliana's hearts were already beating violently. Even though they were known as prodigies and had attained the rank of Grand Knight before they were minors, Erica and Liliana were still just ordinary humans after all. If there was a protective magic spell, it would be fine. But if there was no protection and they came into direct contact with the darkness around Athena, then Erica and Liliana's lives would be cursed and inevitably dragged into death until their lives were completely exhausted. With that in mind, Erica and Liliana instinctively cast defensive magic, covering their bodies in a faint glow. However, Athena did not even look at Erica and Liliana. She just looked at Noah, or more accurately, at the stone of Gorgon in Noah's hand, and her expressionless, delicate face sank slightly. Am I still one step too late after all? What? Noah curled his lips and smiled. Do you need me to comfort you? Athena stared at Noah speechlessly, and after a while, she turned her eyes in a direction. It was an altar at the end of the ruins. In the center of the altar, there was a lake-like spring. Athena looked at the lake and said expressionlessly, I just didn't expect that lake to be connected to the sea. Otherwise, the stone of Gorgon would not have come to such a place. Upon hearing this, Noah, Electra, Liliana, and the others were all stunned. Poseidon, the god of the sea, is my enemy. The sea under his control is the most suitable place to bury my snake. Athena raised her eyes and stared at Noah with a cold light in her eyes. However, because of the confrontation between the enemies, my snake seemed to have been stimulated by a huge spell. It transformed into the winged serpent, a dependent of the mother goddess of the earth, and swam over from the sea and entered the ruins. Athena's stone of Gorgon was originally sleeping in the sea, and it began to become active with Athena's awakening. If there were no accidents, the stone of Gorgon, which was active because of Athena's awakening, would drift with the sea current, and as long as it was not found and salvaged by others, it would eventually return to Athena. However, because of the huge spell generated by the battle between Noah and Tony, the stone of Gorgon seemed to be stimulated again and turned into a winged serpent and swam into the ruins. Since the lake on the altar of the ruins was connected to the sea, it could explain why the stone of Gorgon swam into the ruins. However, my snake is not so easily stimulated. Athena's dark eyes flashed with wisdom as she stared at Noah. Unless, O God Slayer, you have the power to stimulate the stone of Gorgon, such as the same snake or snake slayer, divine power. Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. The snake that represented Athena's essence was the winged serpent, which was a dragon. And one of Noah's 10 incarnations, the Dragonman incarnation, did indeed have the ability to transform Noah's body into a body that was comparable to that of a giant dragon and had the effect of causing great damage to dragons. In other words, Athena's guess was completely correct. As expected of the goddess of wisdom, she easily guessed one of the powers that Noah had never used. At that moment, Noah laughed. Regardless of the process, Athena, your snake, is indeed in my hands now. Without the divine power of the Queen of the Trinity restored, do you think you can still take away your snake from me? This sentence made the atmosphere at the scene become heavy all of a sudden. Athena continued to stare at Noah with an expressionless face. Noah, on the other hand, responded with a calm expression. Erica and Liliana, on the other hand, were sweating profusely. After a long time, Athena suddenly smiled. Strength is not the only thing that can be used as a weapon. Even if my strength is not as good as yours, I still have wisdom that no one can match. With that said, Athena gave Noah a deep look. I will come to you again. With that, Athena's body was covered by a burst of darkness and disappeared. Noah quietly looked in that direction, not saying a word. Chapter 503. Because of the matter of Athena and the stone of Gorgon, after coming out of the ruins, Erica and Liliana said that they needed to report this matter to the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross before they found a hotel to stay in and disappeared without a trace. Whether it was the Copper and Black Cross or the Bronze and Black Cross, they were the kind of magic societies that stood at the top of Italy. Therefore, as long as it was still in Italy, except for a few places, there were branches of the Copper Black Cross and the Bronze Black Cross in many cities. Even on holiday islands like Sardinia, there were members of these two magic associations active. Because of this, the whereabouts of the god of disobedience who appeared in Italy were generally the fastest to be known and reported to the magic societies they belonged to. If they wanted to deal with the god of disobedience, this level of response was more or less necessary. Noah also met the heads of the branches of the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross in this city. The other party seemed to have known about Noah's identity for a long time. Even if they knew that both Erica and Liliana were popular prodigies in the two magic societies, the two heads did not pay any attention to Erica and Liliana. Instead, they were submissive to Noah, as if Noah was their boss. Erica's uncle was the commander-in-chief of the entire Copper and Black Cross, and the entire Copper and Black Cross was completely under his control, and Liliana's grandfather was also in charge of the Black Cross. That was to say, whether it was Erica or Liliana, just based on their identity alone, they were definitely the princesses of the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross. Under such circumstances, the heads of the two small branches ignored the two princesses and only entertained Noah, and Erica and Liliana still had a natural look on their faces. It was enough to see what kind of identity and status the God Slayer had. After the heads of the Copper and Black Cross and the Bronze and Black Cross branches entertained Noah, Erica and Liliana called the two heads aside and asked them to contact the headquarters and explain the whole thing. The Queen of the Trinity, Athena. Such a god was hiding in the dark and eyeing Noah covetously. Not to mention Erica and Liliana, even Noah himself was a little annoyed. From this point of view, the stone of Gorgon was really a hot potato. So, while Erica and Liliana were busy all day, Noah played with the Gorgon stone in boredom until night came. In the most luxurious room on the top floor of the hotel, Noah, who had just come out of the bathroom, only had a towel wrapped around his lower body and a towel around his neck. While drying his hair and face, he sat on the sofa and drank milk. To be honest, no matter which world he was in, Noah's life had never been as luxurious as it was now. Even in Haolang Academy, which provided tuition, accommodation, food, and even living expenses, it was the same. However, Noah was not uncomfortable with this kind of life. Although he had never lived so extravagantly in the past, Noah had the experience of being flattered like this. Therefore, for this kind of luxury, Noah also had the mentality of it's dispensable and it's a waste not to enjoy it, and accepted it with a clear conscience. At this time, on the glass table in front of the sofa, a mobile phone rang. Hearing the sound of the mobile phone, Noah, who was drinking milk, frowned. This mobile phone was given to Noah by Erica today, saying that it would be more convenient for him to move around. Moreover, it also had the private mobile phone numbers of the big bosses of the Copper and Black Cross and Bronze and Black Cross, including Erica and Liliana, saying that if there was anything he could just tell them and no one would refuse the king's request. And this also meant that the number of people who knew Noah's mobile phone number would be very limited. Not everyone could make this call. So, which big boss called Noah? Noah, who picked up the mobile phone, looked at the words, "unable to display," displayed on the mobile phone interface. His frown deepened, but he still picked up the phone. As soon as he picked up the phone, before Noah could say hello, a hearty and impatient voice sounded from the other end of the phone. "Oh, Noah, my best friend. Did you miss me?" Hearing this familiar voice that he didn't want to recall at all, Noah was silent for a while, and then hung up the phone without hesitation. The next second, the mobile phone rang again. And Noah didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but he felt that the ringtone was quite urgent this time. Noah, who was speechless, picked up the phone again. Hey, aren't you going too far?" The person on the other side of the phone said in a helpless tone. "It's fine if you leave me without saying a word. As my most intimate existence, I believe that you will return to my side sooner or later. But you even hung up the phone. That's a little hurtful. My heart is broken into two halves. It's cold." At first glance, it was like a man was kissing his beloved woman sweetly. But who would have thought that the man who said such a sentence to Noah was holding a magic sword that would cause irreparable damage to people as long as they touched it, and waved it at Noah without hesitation? Well, Noah, who also didn't hesitate to use a punch to directly hit the other side into the depths of the ground, was not qualified to say this sentence. "You idiot, you don't look like the kind of guy who would call a friend to exchange pleasantries, right? That's why I'm wondering if you're planning to have a duel with me." Noah sneered back. "Is it strange to hang up on you like this? Well, that's not a bad idea, but you're my lifelong rival. I plan to spend the rest of my life slowly tasting you. It would be too boring to end it so quickly," Tony said with a smile. "So you don't have to worry, although I'm not calling to exchange pleasantries, I'm not calling to fight, I just want to tell you something." Hearing this, Noah was puzzled at first, and then he thought of something. "What you're talking about, don't tell me you're referring to the stone of Gorgon?" Oh, Tony cried out happily. "In other words, the stone that can attract the Trinity Queen Athena is really with you? Why?" Noah curled his lips. "Do you want it?" "If I can, of course I want it. It's a chance to fight with Her Majesty the Ancient Queen. I want it badly." Tony's voice became more or less serious. "However, I'm not the only one who has his eyes on it." Noah was stunned. Sasha de Janstel. Tony slowly uttered a name that made everyone in the magic world tremble. Even if you have just become a godslayer, you should have heard of this name, right? Noah narrowed his eyes. Of course, Noah had heard of this name. And he had just become a godslayer not long ago, when he was invited by Alice for a meeting he heard from Erica and Liliana. As mentioned earlier, the Wise Men's Parliament began to study the deicide in order to protect the Queen of England from an ancient deicide who was very likely to be a danger to the Queen of England. That was how it developed into its current nature. This ancient godslayer was the person Tony was talking about now, Sasha de Janstel. 200 years ago, he had killed a god. Among all the kings who had killed gods, he was the strongest, oldest, and most capricious one, the god-slayer. It was said that this old man had killed no less than 10 gods, and he had the most authority of all the godslayers. He was undoubtedly the strongest of all the godslayers today. The only one who could match up to this old man was another deicide who lived in China for as long as he was. People usually called him Marquis Vauban. Combined with the previous words, Noah had already guessed the reason why Tony mentioned this name. As expected, Tony told Noah the guess in his heart. "I've received news that the old man is coming to Italy." Chapter 504. Today's oldest godslayer was heading to Italy and would arrive in a few days. This was the news that Tony brought to Noah. Troublesome characters are coming one after another. Holding the phone, Noah sighed, and then asked Tony on the other side of the phone. "That so-called old man is also coming for the stone of Gorgon? Other than that, there's no other reason for the old man to come to my turf," Tony said in a playful tone, which surprised Noah. After all, no matter what, with my relationship with him, it would not be surprising if we killed each other one day. "What?" Noah raised an eyebrow. "Do you have a grudge against him?" "I don't know if it counts as a grudge, but there must be a grudge between us," Tony said indifferently. "As you know, it hasn't been more than 5 years since I became a godslayer. The first god I killed was the Celtic god king, Nuada. From that unlucky god, I usurped the authority of the demon sword. And the second god I killed was Siegfried. The authority of the steel barrier was seized from this god." Tony laughed heartily. However, this god was originally the god of disobedience that the old man summoned in a rather interesting way. It was originally his prey, but I stole it. Hearing this, Noah was speechless. Since Siegfried was the second god that Tony killed, it proved that before this, Tony was just a rookie who had just become a godslayer, right? He had just become a godslayer, and he dared to steal the god of disobedience that the oldest godslayer spent a lot of effort to summon? This guy was really an idiot, and his courage was boundless. That old man was a wanderer who basically had no desires other than appetite. Other than eating food, the only thing he pursued was fighting, right? At this moment, Tony seemed to be talking about himself, and his tone became more or less thought-provoking. "So, I stole his prey, and he's quite upset with me. Now he's openly stepping into my territory. If he's not here to fight me, then he's here for the stone of Gorgon in your hand that can attract Athena." In other words, there was only one reason why Marquis Woban, who was evaluated by Tony as having only a desire to fight, had come to Italy. Battle. As for whether they were here to settle scores with Tony or to take a fancy to Noah's prey, Tony was more inclined to believe the latter. "I'm just a child to that old man, but gods are prey in his eyes." Compared to a child, that wanderer is undoubtedly more interested in prey, Tony said seriously. "I'm here to remind you that you've been targeted by Athena, and now there's a ferocious old demon king who may come looking for you. You're working so hard, and as a good friend, I can't stand it. Come on, you're just saying that to persuade me to give you this stone of Gorgon, right?" Noah's words directly exposed Tony's thoughts. "Also, it's not just the ancient queen and the ancient godslayer who have their eyes on me. There's also you, an idiot who only knows how to fight other than eating." "Don't say that." Undoubtedly, Tony was still smiling when his intentions were exposed. "Anyway, There's an old demon king who's going to look for you, isn't there? You can have a good fight with him. How about you give me Athena? There's a serious contradiction in your words. Noah rolled his eyes. Since that old guy is after Athena like you, then the only thing he has his eyes on is the Stone of Gorgon. If I give you the Stone of Gorgon, then he'll turn around and look for you. To him, I'm a little brat who's younger than you, and he's even less likely to be interested in me, isn't that right? Tony obviously did not think of this and was speechless for a moment, but he quickly said, I don't think of that kind of thing. I can't think of such a complicated thing. Anyway, if you give me the stone and that old guy comes, then we can have a fight together. That will definitely be very interesting. In other words, if the negotiation fails, you're going to act like an idiot? Noah sighed. If that's the case, then we're done. Wait. Tony seemed to realize something and hurriedly said. However, after knowing that Tony was not thinking of anything at all, and was just following his own thoughts and calling him without any suggestions for a solution, Noah would not waste his breath on this idiot. So, ignoring Tony's panicked voice, Noah hung up the phone. As soon as he hung up the phone, the expression on Noah's face slowly became thoughtful. Athena said that power was not the only thing that could be used as a weapon. As the goddess of wisdom, Athena's wisdom was also an unquestionable force. So, here's the problem. Athena's snake only fell into Noah's hands today, and not even a day had passed. In such a short time, it was reasonable for Tony to know that the Gorgon stone was in his hands. After all, this was Tony's territory, and Erica and Liliana had also reported this matter to the Copper and Black Cross, so it was not surprising that Tony would know. But how did that warband find out? Although Warban lived in the Balkans and was a neighbor of the Italian peninsula, they were separated by an ocean. It was impossible for him to know that Noah had the Gorgon stone in less than half a day, right? Therefore, Noah could only come up with one possibility. Athena, it's you, isn't it? Although they were both God-slayers and God-slayers were at most the same kind, not companions. Even humans would scheme against each other, let alone the God-slayers, who had terrible power and were absolutely capable of fighting for the world's territory. Noah suspected that it was Athena who deliberately spread the news, and even directly passed it on to Warban, so that Warban would come to him. Based on Noah's understanding of Warban, he was definitely the same as Tony. If Athena personally came to them and said to them, if you want to duel with me, you have to help me regain my power, they would not hesitate to do so. Therefore, there were many ways for the goddess of wisdom to provoke Warban and lure him over. And even if people like Warban and Tony could not get the Gorgon stone from Noah, Athena could patiently wait for the opportunity to snatch the Gorgon stone back. Even if she failed, she could continue to regroup and lure other God-slayers over. Although they were unwilling to admit it, as Erica and Liliana thought in their hearts, the God-slayers were basically problematic people. If she wanted to provoke these people and use them, there were many ways to do so, right? Sure enough, a woman who is too smart is not easy to deal with, let alone a goddess. Noah could not help but complain out loud. Wouldn't it be better to be silly like Mira and Lisanna? Wouldn't that be cute? After that, Noah rubbed his eyebrows. I don't care, because of Tony and Athena, I didn't sleep last night. If I don't rest tonight, even if a god or a god-slayer comes to me, I won't have the energy to fight. After saying this, Noah glanced at the Gorgon stone next to his phone, stood up, and walked toward the bed. Just like that, 3 days passed. During these 3 days, Noah had been moving around the hotel and did not go far. Even if he knew that there were God-slayers and the god of disobedience watching him at the same time, Noah acted as if nothing had happened and tried to walk around as much as possible, trying to find some clues about the world fragment. For Noah, competing with the God-slayers and the god of disobedience was just an interlude in life, and finding the world fragment was the real goal. However, this pattern of action was really broken in the morning 3 days later, because Noah received an extremely urgent call from the branch heads of the Copper Black Cross and Bronze Black Cross. My king, Miss Erica and Miss Liliana were taken away by Marquis Warban. Chapter 505. Whoosh! A strong wind blew from the sky towards the high-rise building, whistling through the air. On the rooftop of such a skyscraper, an old man was sitting on a luxurious chair that was extremely out of tune with the surroundings. It was impossible for him to appear on the rooftop of a skyscraper. He crossed his legs and closed his eyes, like an emperor taking a nap on the throne. His whole body exuded a terrifying sense of existence. The old man's appearance gave people a feeling of being full of wisdom. He had a wide forehead, deep eye sockets, and a very pale face. Anyone who saw him would think that the old man was an expert or a professor. His silver hair was neatly combed, and even his beard was very clean, very suitable for wearing a white coat. However, the rumors and deeds of the old man were absolutely not in line with his appearance. Because he was a real overlord. He would take the service of the people around him for granted and would be quite used to giving orders. Because he was a real demon. As long as he could satisfy his own selfish desires, the old man would not hesitate to destroy the human race even if it meant that he would do it. Sasha de Janstelvauban. These two names were the names that people called the old man. The most ancient God-slayer, today. This was him. Besides such a terrifying old demon, Erica and Liliana stood side by side. They did not talk, and there was no trace of being restrained on their bodies. Like maids serving the king, they just stood quietly on the side and fell into an indescribable silence. Then, what broke this indescribable silence was the extremely loud sound of a collision. Dong! As if intending to expel the heavy feeling of the entire space, the door of the rooftop was directly blown open. Against the roaring wind, Noah slowly walked up the stairs and came to the rooftop. Seeing Noah's arrival, Erica and Liliana did not show a happy expression. Instead, they laughed bitterly. So it's here after all? Erica shrugged. A meeting between kings? In such a situation, it's really hard to say whether they intend to have a talk or a duel, right, Lily? Liliana did not answer Erica's question, but there was a hint of helplessness and anxiety on her face. Just like what Erica had said. Under such circumstances, it was really hard to guarantee that the two people in front of him, who could make the entire magic world tremble with a casual stomp of their feet, wouldn't fight. If that was the case, it would be too terrifying. One was a terrible king who defeated the King of Swords of Italy as soon as he became a god-slayer, bringing catastrophic damage to Italy. One of them was the world's oldest, and most unpredictable, terrifying demon king who had met the former Queen of England out of interest. A meeting between two kings like this would definitely make anyone tremble in fear. However, the person involved didn't take this meeting seriously. Warben's eyes were still closed. He rested his face on one hand and dozed off in the luxurious chair. Noah walked in unhurriedly, and he didn't even look at Warban. His gaze immediately fell on Erica and Liliana, and the corners of his mouth curled up. You two are doing better than I thought. I thought you would at least have someone watching over you or tied up. You're overthinking it, Your Majesty. Erica revealed her usual gorgeous smile as if she didn't realize her current situation. Everyone in the world knows about Erica Brantley's bravery, but it's not sensible to run away in the face of a god-slayer. In fact, Erica and I weren't captured by the Marquis. The Marquis just appeared in front of us and threatened to take us with him. We followed him obediently. Liliana closed her eyes, and her expression was still serious. I'm really sorry. As Your Majesty's followers, we're really too lousy. A hint of indignance appeared on Liliana's pretty face, which Noah didn't miss. It seemed that when Warban appeared, Liliana did want to resist, but she gave up in the end. It was because of Erica's persuasion. Rebelling against the ancient God-slayer is also an unwise thing to do. It will only delay the meeting of the two kings a little. Apart from that, it won't do anything else. Erica spoke her mind bluntly. She had no intention of hiding it at all. Besides, even without us, the Marquis can still meet Your Majesty whenever he wants. In that case, why do we have to do something unnecessary? With that said, Erica turned her gaze to Warban, her tone carrying a hint of provocation. Am I right, Marquis? The Marquis. With this sentence as a switch, The atmosphere in the surroundings switched to a state of imminent conflict. That Paul Brantley has an interesting niece. Erica's intellectual voice that carried a hint of madness that others couldn't detect sounded faintly. It drowned out the strong wind and clearly entered the ears of everyone present. On the surface, that's what you say, but in fact, you don't have any intention of obeying me at all. You're like a lion that is locked in a cage, but will still wave its claws at me. It's rare for you to have such courage at such a young age. Warban opened his eyes as soon as he heard this. It was a pair of pale green eyes that glowed like emeralds and resembled a ferocious lone wolf. But that's what makes it interesting. Warban chuckled in a seemingly joyful manner. I hate dogs that only know how to obey. On the contrary, I love wolves that know how to resist. If you don't have the ability to resist, there's no need for me to even speak. Although you're a lioness, I'm very satisfied that you're baring your fangs at me. Just like you, the little girl from the Kranikar family over there isn't someone who will wag her tail at me. The two of you are really interesting. Very good. That's the only way you have value by my side. Warban turned his pale green eyes to Noah. A dangerous smile appeared on his aged face. You're an outrageously young king. Originally, I wouldn't have thought of coming to you since you've just become one of my kind for less than a month. But you have something that interests me. Can you give it to me? Warban's words were full of indisputable certainty. It wasn't because Warban was arrogant enough to think that as long as he spoke, Noah would listen to his orders and give him what he wanted. It was because Warban was confident that as long as Noah appeared in front of him, he wouldn't be able to get what he wanted, even if he had to snatch it. Noah looked at Warban with a faint smile. He took out a badge and tossed it in his hand. So you're saying that you want me to give you what you want with just a few words? Warban immediately narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. You're right. Although you're too young, you're still one of my kind. Since we're both kings, if I want something from you, it's only right that I give you something of equal value. How about this? Warban snapped his fingers as if he had thought of an idea. You don't seem to have your own territory, right? How about I give you the Balkan Peninsula where I'm currently living? As the kings of the God-slayers, they usually had their own territories. For example, Doni was the chief of the entire Italy. Even if he did not rule, Italy was still his territory. Most of the other God-slayers were the same when it came to this, and Warban was no exception. However, Warban did not like to stay in the same place for too long. Although the Balkan Peninsula was his territory, Warban would not feel the slightest bit of heartache if he were to give it away. This made Noah laugh, and it was an extremely mocking laugh. You're giving me something that you don't want in exchange for a god relic that can attract the highest level, the god of disobedience. Master Marquis, don't tell me you think such a deal will work? What do you want then? Warban's expression remained unchanged as he continued to ask. Treasure? Women? I can give you anyone's head even if it's mine. Is that so? Noah stroked his chin and clapped his hands all of a sudden. How about you give me your head then? The place fell silent all of a sudden. Erica and Liliana's eyes widened. The smile on Warban's face disappeared. You're getting carried away, kid. A terrifying aura rose from Warban's body. Chapter 506. You're too complacent, kid. Following these words, Warban's thin body suddenly erupted with a tremendous amount of curse power, which directly turned into a storm and pushed back the wind blowing in the surrounding buildings. At the same time, Warban's green eyes, which were staring at Noah, shone like gems. Under such circumstances, Noah felt an extremely strange curse power suddenly wrap around his body. Seeing that Warban's eyes flashed with green light and Noah did not react, Erica and Liliana were shocked. You can't. Erica immediately warned. You can't look at his eyes. Your Majesty. That's the authority called Sodom's pupil. It's one of Marquis Warban's authority. Liliana also hurriedly said. This authority can turn all living things within the Marquis line of sight into salt crystals. Even if the God Slayer has an extremely strong resistance to curse power. part of his body will be turned into salt when facing this authority. After all, it was a power that belonged to the category of authority, the true power of God. Even if the God-slayer had an extraordinary resistance to curse power, part of his body would be turned into salt if he looked directly at those evil eyes. At the very least, he should not look directly at those evil eyes. In that case, as a God-slayer, Noah should be able to more or less slow down the speed of his body being turned into salt, right? That was what Erica and Liliana thought. However, not only did Noah not look at Warbin's eyes as Erica and Liliana had warned him, but he directly met Warbin's evil eyes with a faint smile on his face. Bang! The next moment, only Noah and Warban could sense the curse power that had wrapped around Noah due to the activation of Sodom's pupil, suddenly exploded and dissipated. Even Warban was stunned when he noticed this. For ordinary people, Warban's eye of Sodom was an evil eye that was directly linked to death, but for a godslayer, not only could it weaken its effects, but it would also not be too difficult to break through this authority if there were no accidents. But Noah didn't even use his curse power. How did he break Sodom's pupil just like that? Warban could not help but be surprised. Warban had no idea that Noah's physique was far more ridiculous than his strength. Noah had 3 special constitutions. Firstly, he could absorb all the power that entered his body without leaving a single drop behind. Secondly, he could eliminate all negative powers and side effects. Thirdly, he could automatically recover his magic power, curse power, like a world that operated freely. He had no weaknesses at all. It was precisely because of his physique that could eliminate all negative forces and side effects that Warbin's pupils of Sodom was not even as useful as Yoju's magic eye for Noah. Therefore, to deal with Noah, he absolutely could not use negative powers such as curses, poisons, and weakening that would indirectly affect his body. If he wanted to deal with Noah, he had to directly attack Noah's body physically. It was absolutely useless to play some roundabout tricks. Although Warban didn't know what was going on, he didn't put too much hope in his pupils of Sodom. It was not an authority that was suitable to deal with the God-slayers and the God of disobedience. You have some ability. As a brat who was born less than a month ago, I'll give you my praise. Warbin sat down on a luxurious chair in a calm manner, and the light shimmering in his green eyes disappeared, but his expression became even more dangerous. Then I'll use my real strength a little. After saying that, Warban stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. The surrounding gale suddenly became violent. In the sky, dark clouds appeared out of nowhere and began to fill the entire horizon, blocking out all the light, causing the world to become dim. Rumble! With the sound of thunder, strong winds, torrential rain, and lightning began to take effect in the dark clouds at the same time. That's the stormy storm. Erica's expression tensed up. Not only can it summon storms, but it can also summon thunder, lightning, and tornadoes. It can control the authority of wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. Hearing this, Noah curled his lips into a smile. In Noah's mind, the stone plate that was connected to the patterns of the 10 avatars suddenly turned and pointed to a pattern of a tornado falling from the sky. Snap! The next moment, Noah also snapped his fingers. The strong winds, lightning, and torrential rain that were rolling back and forth in the sky suddenly stopped. Even the pervasive dark clouds solidified. Whoosh! A violent whirlwind suddenly blew up from above the dark clouds. Like a vortex of air, it twisted the dark sky into a mess and blew away the thick dark clouds. As a result, the sky that was still cloudy a second ago suddenly became bright again as if it was a joke. What? Warban finally frowned. Seeing this, Noah withdrew his hand and said indifferently, "The authority of controlling wind, rain, thunder, and lightning is indeed amazing, but unfortunately my authority can not only cause storms, but also control the sky. Your plan to use the authority from the sky is really a bad move." "Is that so?" Warbin's face darkened and he sneered. "Then let my hounds deal with you." After that, Warban waved his hand forcefully and the floor of the luxurious chair he was sitting on immediately trembled. A dark shadow spread out in all directions with Warben's position as the center. Not long after, gigantic wolves that were as large as horses, with hair as grayish-black as mice, and eyes that were similarly green emerged from the shadows. Their beastly eyes shone with a ferocious glint as they stared at Noah. "That's the pack of greedy wolves," Liliana exclaimed. "The authority of being able to summon dozens or even hundreds of giant wolves, Marquis Warben's first authority." As though to prove Liliana's words, the huge wolves let out a low growl that belonged solely to wild beasts. They tightened their bodies and abruptly shot forward, pouncing fiercely toward Noah's direction. Looking at the pack of wolves that covered him like raindrops, Noah narrowed his eyes. In his heart, the stone plate that was originally pointing at the image of the incarnation of the storm rotated again, and pointed at the image of a person in luxurious clothing with his arms open towards the sky, as if he wanted to embrace the entire sky. At this moment, a spell power that was slowly burning like flames burst out of Noah's body, causing Noah's eyes to shine with a dim light. "Back off!" A cold shout sounded from Noah's mouth, carrying a wave of spell power that reverberated like ripples. It surged in all directions and swept past the giant wolves. The ferocious giant wolves were like wolfhounds that had their necks grabbed. They all stopped and fell to the ground, unable to move at all. Seeing this scene, Warben first widened his eyes, then his expression became gloomy. Facing such a Warben, Noah calmly crossed his arms with a faint smile on his face. "Is that all, old mister?" Warben's expression suddenly became extremely ugly. From start to finish, Warben had used 3 authorities. The Eye of Sodom was broken for no reason. The storm of raging waves was cleanly dispelled. Now, even the first authority, that Warben had obtained, the pack of greedy wolves, was controlled by the authority, turning Warben's most ferocious hounds into obedient and loyal dogs. As the oldest Godslayer, and the one who had always placed himself in a high position, how could Warben endure such humiliation? In the eyes of Erica and Liliana, this short battle left them speechless. After all, whether it was Noah or Warben, they had not moved even a centimeter from their original positions from beginning to end. Under such circumstances, the 2 kings had displayed a power that ordinary humans could not resist. How could this not make people tremble in fear? Of course, what surprised Erica and Liliana the most was the power that Noah had displayed. As the youngest king in the world today, Noah was at ease even when facing the oldest demon king. With a 200-year age gap, Noah had the upper hand. Chapter 507. A whir. The howls of the wolves rose and fell one after another, echoing constantly on the rooftop. But if one listened carefully, they would discover that not only did these howls not have the slightest trace of ferocity, but they were also full of fear. Although they were tamed beasts summoned by Warben with his authority, the large group of giant wolves in front of him were obviously not at the level of divine beasts. They were only much stronger than ordinary wolves, and they didn't even have any special powers. Let alone Noah, even Erica or Liliana should be able to deal with such a group of wolves, right? Therefore, under the control of Noah's priest incarnation, even if they were unwilling, the large group of giant wolves in front of him howled in fear and trembled. They began to retreat one after another as if they had met their natural enemy. This made Warben's expression turn even uglier. He had placed himself in a high position, but all his means were effortlessly broken by the other party. There was nothing better than this fact to show who had the upper hand in terms of power. Looking at Noah's calm appearance, Warben finally straightened his body slowly. It was as if a wild wolf that had been dozing off just now had suddenly woken up and found its prey. It wouldn't be strange for it to be in a state where it didn't know when it would pounce forward. "It seems that I've underestimated you, kid." Warben's eyes became extremely aggressive as he stared at Noah. "I've heard some rumors about you. I heard that you became the king after killing 2 of the highest-level gods of disobedience not long ago. But no matter what, you're just a new king who was born less than a month ago. Even if you killed 2 gods at the same time, you're just an immature kid with 2-inch authorities. I didn't pay much attention to you. But now, it seems that I've indeed made a mistake that I shouldn't have. The corners of Warbin's mouth curled into a terrifying arc. His pale green eyes flickered like a wild wolf at night, sending chills down one's spine. Even if you're just an immature kid, you're still a king. You can kill gods, so you're on the same level as me. I shouldn't have underestimated you. You're indeed qualified to be my prey. I've made the right choice coming here. Even if I can't kill Athena, I should be able to have fun with you. Warbin's words became more and more impassioned. Obviously, Warbin's fighting spirit had been aroused by Noah. This caused Noah to glance at Warban, and he suddenly changed the topic of the conversation. I know that you're here because Athena instigated you, right? Warbin's movements paused. Under Warbin's gaze, Noah spoke indifferently. Originally, I wasn't interested in fighting with Athena at all. I just wanted to fulfill my so-called responsibility as a king. If someone was willing to take this job, other than Tony, who only knows how to cause trouble, I'd be more than happy to do it. If you really just want to fight a powerful god and come to me for the Stone of Gorgon, then I don't mind giving it to you. Noah said sarcastically. It's a pity that as long as you came to me and asked, I would have seriously considered it and let you achieve your goal. However, you didn't take the initiative to come to me and discuss it with me. Instead, you kidnapped the people around me and made me come to you on my own accord to show you that you're superior. This kind of meaningless method is probably referring to people like you who take advantage of their seniority, right? But you've forgotten, Warban. Noah put the Stone of Gorgon in his hand into the pocket of his clothes, slowly raised his head, and looked straight at Warban. In the end, the reason why the gods' layers are kings is because humans can't resist them. In the end, they still rely on their own strength. Only the strength of one's strength determines one's status, not age. You look down on me because I've only been a god slayer for a short time? You look down on me because I don't have much power? Noah's sarcastic voice resounded through the sky. Then let me, a young man, tell you whether it's time for an old man who has lived for 200 years to retire and lie in his coffin. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying power suddenly burst out from Warbin's body and spread over the entire rooftop. Warbin's face was as ugly as it could be, and there was a real murderous intent in his eyes as he stared at Noah. Good boy. You're good. In the low roar full of anger, the curse power on Warbin's body surged into the sky like a flame soaring into the sky. Then let me see if you, a so-called young man, have the ability to send an old man like me to my coffin. After that, Warban stood up from the luxurious chair and let out a terrifying roar. Hiowa dash. In the inhuman roar, Warbin's body swelled up, and every part of his body bulged outwards. Rip. The clothes on Warbin's body were torn apart very neatly. As his body continued to swell, Warbin's height soon exceeded 5 meters, and it was still growing. My pack of greedy wolves can summon more than just a pack of wolves. I can also transform into a werewolf like you. Let me see if your strength is as powerful as your mouth. Boy. Warban, whose body was still expanding, could not wait to raise his huge wolf claws as he roared. With a fierce gust of wind, he swung them in Noah's direction. Looking at the incoming sharp claws, Noah closed his eyes. Welslana had an incarnation called camel. No matter where it was, a camel that could cross the desert was synonymous with a strong body and amazing endurance. When Welslana used the camel incarnation, not only could he obtain fighting ability that surpassed his wild instincts and intuition, but it could also increase his endurance and leg strength. Even if he suffered a serious blow, it could reduce the pain and quickly stop the bleeding, allowing Welslana to continue fighting no matter how much damage he suffered. As for Mekl, he was the representative of the dragon slayers. Those who knew about Mekl's mythology would know that the Mediterranean god King Mekl had another name. But he was a powerful existence that was even recorded in the Bible. Mekl's true form was Baal. Only in the Mediterranean would this famous god king be called Mekl. When mentioning Baal, one could not ignore Baal's enemy, Dragon King Yamu. The reason why Mekl, whose true form was Baal, was able to become the king of gods was because in the mythology, he lured Dragon King Yamu away from his throne and killed him. Through this crusade, Mekl successfully sat on the throne of the god king. Therefore, Mekl was a typical dragon slayer, the natural enemy of all dragons. With the help of Noah's constitution, Welaslana's, Camel, and Mekl's, Dragon Slayer, merged, giving birth to the Dragonborn incarnation. Draconian, combining the incarnation of Welaslana's, Camel, and the Dragon Slayer, authority. Using this incarnation, not only can one obtain a close combat ability that surpasses one's wildness and intuition, but it can also transform one's body into that of a dragon, obtaining a body that is comparable to a giant dragon's. To a certain extent, it can restrain dragon-type creatures and cause great damage to them. The result of the fusion of the camel, which represented a strong body and endurance, and the natural enemy of dragons, the Dragon Slayer, was that while retaining the camel's ability to surpass their wildness and intuition as well as the Dragon Slayer's ability to restrain dragons, it also gave birth to the ability to transform into a dragon's body. In the case of using the incarnation of the Draconian, Noah could basically be regarded as a humanoid dragon with terrifying close combat ability, and he could also produce great lethality to his own kind. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now I shall obtain the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 giant dragons. The majestic me shall raise the ferocious power to slay dragons. After chanting the words to release the incarnation, the stone plate in Noah's heart suddenly turned and pointed to a human-like dragon pattern that stood upright. A powerful force gushed out from Noah's body. The giant wolf's sharp claws swung down and fell on Noah's body. Bang! At the top of the building, the rooftop suddenly shook like an explosion, stirring up thick smoke and wind. Chapter 508. Bam! With a thunderous boom, the rooftop of the tall building exploded into a burst of thick smoke and strong winds, splashing in all directions like a blooming wave. Ah! Under the onslaught of the violent wind, 2 slender figures flew out from the blooming smoke and dust. They subconsciously let out a cry of surprise. Their hands were still blocking in front of their bodies. Obviously, they were blown away by the strong wind that blew them away. They were Erica and Liliana. Erica and Liliana, who were blown out of the rooftop of the building, were startled at first, but they quickly reacted. Erica adjusted her body in midair. After stabilizing her body, she stomped her feet down as if she was stepping on air. Fly, boots of Hermes. After a short chant, a crimson magic array fluctuated under Erica's feet and turned into a platform. Thump, thump, thump. Erica tapped her feet in the air again and again. Every time she tapped her feet, a crimson magic circle would ripple under her feet, allowing Erica, who had used leap, to retreat quickly in midair as if she were walking on flat ground. Compared to Erica, Liliana was much more straightforward. She didn't even need to adjust her posture before she chanted the incantation. Wings of Artemis, through the night, please grant me the privilege of flying in the Tao of heaven. As soon as her voice trailed off, the outline of Liliana's body was covered by a layer of blue halo, causing her body to suddenly stop in midair and float up as light as a feather. It was the flight magic that only orthodox witches could use. Erica and Liliana, who used the leap and flight magic respectively, almost subconsciously chose to stay away from the building that had turned into a battlefield. They landed on the rooftop of another building and quickly raised their heads to look at the building in front of them. Boom! Just as a strong gust of wind and a thick cloud of dust rose from the rooftop, another muffled sound rang out. It was as if it had directly hit one's heart, causing one's heart to shrink. This made the violent gust of wind even more terrifying. Immediately after, a figure and a huge wolf shadow respectively protruded out from the thick smoke and dust. Rubbing against the air, they landed on the ground with a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Bang! From Erica and Liliana's direction, they could clearly see that the ordinary-sized figure stabilized himself at the critical moment and landed on the ground with his feet. With a muffled thud, he fell to the ground as if he had fallen from 1,000 pounds, causing the ground to crack like a spider web. Bang! As for the huge wolf shadow, it wasn't as agile as the human-sized figure. Its huge body suddenly smashed into the ground, stirring up a burst of gravel and causing the ground to explode, turning into a crater the size of a house. Woo dash. Even so, the huge werewolf quickly got up from the crater and roared at the sky. Except for the dust on his body, he wasn't injured at all. As far as the result was concerned, neither Noah nor Warban was able to determine a clear winner in this first real head-on confrontation. Except for the way one of them landed on the ground in an extremely gorgeous manner and the other in a more embarrassing manner, there was basically no difference between them. Undoubtedly, they had fallen from a building that was at least 100 meters high, but the two kings of the deicide were not injured at all. This was enough to prove the inhuman level of the deicide. However, Noah relied on his strong physique that was comparable to that of a giant dragon in the form of a dragon man to achieve this, while Warban relied on his werewolf form to strengthen his body, which was not inferior to Noah's. Except for the previous brief confrontation where they didn't really use their full strength, this could be regarded as the first real confrontation between Noah and Warban. But as soon as they met face to face, the air was already filled with a heavy pressure that was almost suffocating. It was caused by the unimaginably huge spell power that rose from Noah and Warban. Rumble. At this time, the sound of thunder came from the sky again. Thick dark clouds covered the whole sky, and dazzling lightning flashed. The wind began to howl. A torrential rain poured down and instantly enveloped the whole world, soaking the ground in a short period of time. Noah, who maintained a squatting posture with one hand on the ground, raised his head. Drenched in the cold rain, he cast his gaze at the giant wolf howling at the sky in front of him. Is this one of your tricks again? After all, with the storm and raging waves that could control wind, rain, thunder, and lightning, Warban could summon a storm at any time. If Noah transformed into the incarnation of the storm, he could still disperse the rain and thunder clouds. But without the rain and thunder clouds, Warban's storm and raging waves could at most not summon a storm, but he should still be able to control lightning and tornadoes. Warban was naturally aware of this. His huge body, which had expanded to more than 30 meters tall, slightly straightened. A pair of wolf eyes stared at Noah, revealing the sharp teeth hidden deep in his mouth. I can't help it. I become like this when I'm excited. This also proves that you're qualified to make me take you seriously. Boy, feel honored. Are you still trying to take advantage of your seniority? Noah sneered. Then let me shut your ugly wolf mouth. After that, Noah crouched down, and with a bang, he crushed the spiderweb-like cracks on the ground. His body shot out like an arrow from a bow. Come on, boy. Warban, who had transformed into a 30-meter-tall werewolf, also let out a roar of pleasure. His huge hind legs suddenly stomped on the ground, and like a real wild wolf, he pounced forward. The man and the wolf met in the blink of an eye. One raised his fist and swung it at the tall giant wolf, while the other raised his huge wolf claws and mercilessly swung them at the other. Dong! The completely disproportionate fist and the sharp claw collided in midair, actually causing a loud boom, causing the wind and dust to blow up once again. The man and the wolf, who had exchanged a blow, seemed to have hit an immovable mountain at the same time. Their bodies were bounced back at a faster speed than when they came. Da-da-da-da. Noah's figure nimbly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, removing the force acting on his body with each tap of his foot. Da-da-da-da. Warban retreated repeatedly amidst a series of heavy footsteps, and it was not until he retreated a few dozen meters that he stabilized his body. Even if their sizes were disproportionate, the two of them seemed to be on par with each other in terms of physical strength, which was incredible. However, it was not strange at all when one thought about it. Warban's body had expanded to a height of 30 meters, and presumably, the strength of his body was no weaker than that of a giant dragon. Noah was simply a giant dragon in human form, and when it came to physical strength, he was naturally not at a disadvantage at all. You're quite strong, boy, Warban, who had stabilized his body, growled. In that case, my hounds seem to be useless against you. Let my servants take care of you." As if in response to Warban's words, the next moment, the ground around Warban suddenly trembled, and small hills rose up. Under Noah's astonished gaze, people wearing worn-out armor and ancient cloaks emerged from the hills, holding all kinds of weapons in their hands, and appeared around Warban. "This is also my power." The bastards of the Sage Council seem to call it the Servant of Death. It's a loyal servant who can summon the people I've personally killed in the past in the form of the living dead. They are absolutely obedient to me. Warban's cheerful voice rang out from the huge wolf's mouth. "Of course, I've killed more than tens of millions of people. These are the good ones I've specially selected. Each of them is at the level of the two little girls next to you. Can your spirit of speech work on so many servants?" Noah immediately frowned. If every one of them had the level of a grand knight like Erica and Liliana, then it would not be a problem for Noah's priest incarnation to control a dozen or even dozens of them. However, if there were more than 100 of them, it would be hard to say. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.